Chapter 24:12. The Sword Palace's attitude by Yenron's words were quickly verified. After discovering that Renzu's request had been mercilessly rejected by the slovenly Taoist, Renzu from the Sword Palace did not force the slovenly Taoist for some reason. Instead, he sent the Divine Lord, maybe, to enter the Sword Gate. However, this time, maybe was no longer as dismissive as before. Instead, he was very careful as he climbed up the mountain, as if he was afraid that the slovenly Taoist would appear and beat him up again. However, this time, the slovenly Taoist did not appear. Instead, he allowed him to enter the back of the mountain. This gave maybe Shinjun an illusion. This old thing is really old. He is no longer Renzu, nor is he the Divine Lord. He no longer has the ability to contend with Renzu from the Sword Palace. Perhaps I will be able to take over this Sword Gate in no time. Maybe released his divine sense without any restraint. It was like a terrifying wave of fury that swept towards Yi Fei. Maybe did not plan to meet Yi Fei, even if Yi Fei had defeated Jian Sansheng and Shui Qianxiu. However, Yi Fei was still a nobody. He was not worthy of maybe Shinjuan's attention. Yi Fei, listen carefully. Renzu from the Sword Palace has sent word that you are not a member of the Sword Palace and cannot possess the treasures of the Sword Palace. I will give you 3 days to hand over the black gold Emperor Sword and apologize to Jian Sansheng and Shui Qianxiu in person. Then, the Sword Palace will still tolerate you. What if I don't hand it over? Yi Fei stood up from the mountain with a cold face. Beside him stood Mad Dog, Bai Yanran, and the dragon turtle who had broken through the Lord of Heaven. Maybe's expression changed. His tone was even colder as he said, "If you don't hand it over, then there is no need for you to stay in the Sword Palace. By the way, I heard that you have a treasure that made many divine lords in the city of divine kings go crazy. Now, these divine lords are all rushing to the city of 10,000 swords. You are safe in the Sword Palace. If you are kicked out of the Sword Palace, humph." Mabi didn't say what he wanted to say next, but the threat was obvious. After that, he turned around and left the Sword Gate as fast as he could. Yi Fei, Mad Dog, and Bai Yanran's expressions also darkened. Mad Dog said angrily, "We came to the city of 10,000 swords and directly entered the Sword Palace. The city of divine kings is several months away from here. How could those divine lords catch up so quickly? It must be the Sword Palace from the outside who leaked our information. After all, the Sword Palace was a chaotic place, but they still cared about their reputation. Yi Fei and the other two had saved Renzu's daughter from thousands of miles away and brought her here. With such kindness, if the Sword Palace attacked Yi Fei, their reputation would be ruined. However, if a divine lord from outside the Sword Palace attacked Yi Fei or killed Yi Fei, then no one would blame the Sword Palace. I have to say, the Sword Palace's methods are very clever. They want to force me to hand over the black gold Imperial Sword and erase all my efforts in the Sword Gate. They also want to cut off my motivation to continue moving forward. If I don't hand it over, they will kick me out and let those who covet my Ghost Emperor Cauldron target me. They want to kill me with a borrowed knife. Yi Fei, it looks like we can't stay in the Sword Palace. The black gold Imperial Sword and the Ghost Emperor Cauldron are not ordinary treasures. I'm afraid that if we drag this out, not only will we lose the treasures, we might even lose our lives," Bai Yanran said anxiously. Mad Dog nodded in agreement with Bai Yanran's words. Yi Fei subconsciously looked at the palace at the highest point of the mountain. 3 days ago, the slovenly Taoist had wormed his way into it. He didn't know what he was doing, but when he thought about the relationship between the slovenly Taoist and the Jiutian Swordmaster, Yi Fei was still very confident. Even if the Sword Palace attacked him, the slovenly Taoist would definitely help him at the critical moment. Moreover, in the Sword Palace, he wasn't just the slovenly Taoist. He only had one backer. Now it's time to see if the Sword Palace is worth my anticipation. Yi Fei thought to himself, but his eyes were looking at the distant sky. Not long after Maybe left, another divine lord walked up the mountain. This divine lord was naturally Niu Hao of the Sword Palace. Since they were familiar with each other, Niu Hao didn't beat around the bush. He directly said to Yi Fei, "Yi Fei, I saw him maybe coming just now. He should have brought the conditions of the outer Sword Palace. Now, I brought the conditions of the inner Sword Palace. If you are willing to formally join the inner Sword Palace, Sword Protector Rinzu will personally accept you as his disciple and teach you the Tao of Rinzu. When he dies, the inner Sword Palace will also be handed over to you. It had to be said that the conditions of the inner Sword Palace were very generous. However, Yi Fei couldn't accept the condition of becoming a disciple. He had once become the disciple of the Devil Emperor, even if there was no news of the Devil Emperor in the Heaven Realm, and even if his realm was very low. However, a teacher for a day, a teacher for life. Before he obtained the Devil Emperor's permission, Yi Fei wouldn't casually accept anyone as his disciple. Moreover, Sword Protector Rinzu didn't accept any disciples earlier or later. He just had to recruit him when the Outer Sword Palace was pressuring him. This made Yi Fei feel unhappy that the Inner Sword Palace was taking advantage of the situation to force him. It was also for this reason that when he heard Niu Hao's suggestion, Yi Fei didn't even think about it and directly rejected it. Senior Niu, I appreciate your kindness, but I can't agree. If I don't join the Inner Sword Palace, will Sword Protector Rinzu help me? Niu Hao was stunned when he heard this. He thought that Yi Fei didn't understand the gravity of the situation. He quickly tried to persuade him. Yi Fei, I know that we are taking advantage of the situation by inviting you at this time. However, Sword Protector Rinzu is doing this for your own good. You were born in the wilderness and have no backing. If you were chased out of the Sword Palace, the divine emperors who came from the city of the divine kings will definitely not let you go. That's right. The old man on the mountain is indeed quite capable. Ordinary divine emperors are no match for him. However, you may not know this, but he once swore that he would never leave the Sword Gate. Moreover, Tribulation Rinzu from the Outer Sword Palace is preparing to come out of seclusion and interrogate you personally. When that time comes, the old man won't be able to resist Rinzu. Listen to my advice. You should join the Inner Sword Palace. Niu Hao was trying his best to persuade him. Thank you, but I have made up my mind, Yi Fei said resolutely. He said in a deep voice, please go back and ask Sword Protector Rinzu on my behalf. If I don't join the Inner Sword Palace, will Rinzu be willing to protect me with all his might? After that, Yi Fei bowed, clasped his hands, and bowed very seriously. He bowed for no other reason than for Niu Hao's help in the past. Niu Hao couldn't answer this question. He could only sigh and nod. Please wait a moment. I will ask this question for you. However, you'd better not have too much hope. After that, Niu Hao left quickly and passed on Yi Fei's words to Sword Protector Rinzu as fast as he could. In general, Niu Hao admired Yi Fei very much. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many monarchs pursuing Yi Fei this time, and that the factions were too complicated, and the news from the Yinyang Palace that Yi Fei was on the must-kill list, Niu Hao really didn't want to see Yi Fei fall into a desperate situation. Master, this is the situation. Although Yi Fei didn't agree to join the Inner Sword Palace, he has a close relationship with the Inner Sword Palace. If we can help Yi Fei get through this, it won't be difficult to make Yi Fei submit. Niu Hao stood in front of the palace and reported with his head lowered. A cold voice sounded from within the palace. He refused? Then there's no need to help him. This person doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. Let him fend for himself. It has nothing to do with the Inner Sword Palace. But Rinzu is such a rare talent. Master, haven't you always wanted to take in a genius disciple? Yi Fei is the most suitable candidate. Niu Hao wanted to put in a good word for Yi Fei, but Sword Protector Rinzu's cold voice came from the palace. Chapter 24:13. The first steps of battle tactics. Niu Hao left for 3 days. In the end, there was no news from the Inner Sword Palace. It seemed that the Outer Sword Palace was a threat to Yi Fei. The divine monarchs of the city of divine kings had infiltrated the city of 10,000 swords and were waiting for an opportunity to harm Yi Fei. The news quickly spread to the Sword Gate. Many young geniuses were in an uproar. No one expected that Yi Fei would offend the Outer Sword Palace, Rinzu, and be expelled from the Sword Palace. There were also some who were secretly happy, such as Jian Sansheng and Ma Fong. Great! Yi Fei is finally going to be expelled. Without the protection of the Sword Palace, Yifei won't survive more than 10 days in the city of 10,000 swords. Jin Sansheng and Ma Fong. One was maybe Shinjuan's disciple, the other was Maybe's niece. Maybe didn't hide the news of the Outer Sword Palace targeting Yifei from them. He even deliberately let them spread the news to put more pressure on Yifei. Shui Qianxiu wasn't happy when he heard the news. Instead, he looked worried. Lani was confused. Qianxiu, shouldn't you be happy that Yifei is being expelled from the Sword Palace? This way, the position of the Sword Palace's champion will belong to you. No, Lani, you're wrong. I want to become the champion by defeating Yifei. I won't count on Yifei being killed by a fluke. This way, people will always remember the fact that I lost to him. Shui Qianxiu's expression showed a trace of regret. This trace of regret made Lani look at Shui Qianxiu even more gently. Qianxiu, don't worry. Even if you don't defeat him, you will still be the strongest sword champion in the Sword Palace. No one will say anything about you, because I won't allow it. Lani looked at her sweetheart with determination in her eyes. Shui Qianxiu still shook his head. He suddenly looked at Lani and said in a low voice, Lani, can you help me with something? Rather than watching Yifei die like this, I still hope that I can defeat him with my own hands. Therefore, I would like to ask for your help. Please find a way to get close to Sword Protector Renzu's daughter, Jiang Xiaoi, and help her think of a way to help Yifei leave the Sword Palace and escape the city of 10,000 swords. Shui Qianxiu wasn't doing this for no reason. It was because the Lan clan was the one who controlled the defensive array formation of the city of 10,000 swords. Only the Lan clan could bring Yifei out of the city of 10,000 swords without anyone knowing. However, in this way, you will have to take a certain risk. This is just my idea. If it's too difficult, Lani, please don't force yourself. Shui Qianxiu's eyes were filled with love. How could Lani reject her sweetheart's request? Although this matter was a little difficult, she still nodded and said, It's not difficult to send Yifei out of the city. Our Lan clan is a branch of the Nalan clan, and we also have a super teleportation array formation that can directly reach the capital city of the Crimson Moon Divine Dynasty. Lani's confidence infected Shui Qianxiu. The two of them looked at each other and smiled tacitly. Shui Qianxiu started to use his prestige to deliberately divert many of the Outer Sword Palace disciples who were in charge of monitoring Yifei from within the Sword's Gate. Lani, on the other hand, used the opportunity that the Lan clan members also had to cultivate in the Inner Sword Palace. She easily entered the Inner Sword Palace and found Jiang Xiaoi, who had awakened her 9th grade bloodline. When she heard that Yifei might be expelled from the Sword Palace and his life might be in danger, Jiang Xiaoi immediately became anxious and shouted that she wanted to save the dragon turtle. However, she was still young and couldn't think of a way to solve the problem. Lani also seized the opportunity and told Jiang Xiaoi her plan without hesitation. She also received Jiang Xiaoi's support. However, Jiang Xiaoi was too young to understand that Lani would help Yifei. Therefore, under the suggestion of Lani, Jiang Xiaoi was eager to save Yifei. Jiang Xiaoi was eager to save Yifei. She completely followed Lani's plan and started to rescue Yifei from the Sword's Gate. For this, Jiang Xiaoi even secretly carried the Sword Guardian Renzu and ran out of the palace. Under the cover of Shui Qianxiu, she sneaked into the Sword's Gate. Yifei naturally didn't know about this. Although Niu Hao promised to help him persuade the Sword Guardian Renzu, Yifei's experience of fighting all the way from the Earth Realm to the Heaven Realm made him deeply understand that it was better to rely on oneself than to rely on others. Yifei also didn't expect the Sword Guardian Renzu to help him. While there was still time, the slovenly Taoist was also hiding in the palace and preparing for something. Yifei just put in all his effort and started to cultivate the insane demon battle technique. Although this battle technique is extreme, it's considered unconventional even in the demonic path. However, once mastered, it can actually break the limit of a warrior's bloodline. It can allow me to break the seal in a short period of time and awaken the true bloodline of the earthly emperor. After discovering the effects of the insane demon battle technique, Yi Fei's heart was filled with shock. Although this technique couldn't completely break the seal on his bloodline, just temporarily undoing the seal would increase Yi Fei's combat strength explosively. This was also the most extreme and terrifying part of the insane demon battle technique. Moreover, the insane demon battle technique had another effect, which was to multiply one's combat strength. It was extremely terrifying. As he thought about this, Yi Fei's heart became even more eager to cultivate this technique. It was now the third day since Niu Hao had left. In just 3 days, Yi Fei had already completely comprehended the insane demon battle technique. Not only that, but he also started to cultivate the first level of the insane demon battle technique. According to the description of the frenzied demon battle art, each layer of the mystical ability will grant you double your strength, which will last for 10 breaths time. 10 layers would be 100 breaths time. Brother Ji Feng is currently at the 4th layer, which is equivalent to 40 breaths time, allowing him to double his strength. However, in order for the frenzied demon battle art to reach the level where I can temporarily break the seal of my bloodline, I still need to reach the 1st layer of the frenzied demon battle art within 10 days. When he thought of this, Yi Fei felt immense pressure. After all, it had taken Mad Dog half a year to cultivate the insane demon battle technique to the 4th level. On the other hand, Yi Fei needed less than 10 days to successfully cultivate the insane demon battle technique. The difficulty level was extremely high. However, no matter how difficult it was, Yi Fei had to completely overcome the Sword Palace, Rinzhu, the city of divine monarchs, and the pursuing divine monarchs. Therefore, in the following days, Yi Fei devoted almost all of his attention to cultivation. It was the same for by Yanran and Mad Dog. After all, Yi Fei had been chased out of the Sword Palace. As his companion, the Sword Palace wouldn't be too polite to them. If they didn't want to be humiliated, they had to work hard to become stronger. Therefore, during this period, Bai Yanran and Mad Dog worked very hard in their cultivation. However, no matter how hard they worked, they were still a little lacking compared to Yi Fei's craziness. Moreover, Yi Fei wasn't just crazy. Chapter 24:14. Yi Fei's decision. This kid is too much of a blow. Mad Dog recalled the experience of being beaten up by Rod Demon for not being able to learn in the past 6 months. He finally understood why Shuet Tu wanted him to follow Yi Fei, who did not even have a trace of his back. The reason was that Yi Fei's talent was too abnormal. Mad Dog had only seen such abnormal talent in one person so far, and that person was Feng Yun, Uncle Mad Dog's sister Bai. Just as Mad Dog was lost in his thoughts, a young girl's voice rang out from afar. This young girl was none other than Jiang Xiaoi. She had been rescued by Yi Fei and the others on Devil Mountain. Now that she had heard that Yi Fei was in trouble and that her father, the sword protector of a human ancestor, had ignored him, Jiang Xiaoi had been so angry that she had personally rushed in a sword gate to rescue Yi Fei. Mad Dog and Bai Yanran were shocked when they heard Jiang Xiaoi's intentions. They shook their heads and said, "Xiaoi, you're still too young. You're still young. You can't participate in this matter. We'll settle our own matters. No, you've helped me before. I can't leave you behind. You brought me out of Demon Mountain. Now, I'm going to bring you out of Sword Palace." Jiang Xiaoi's expression was very serious. Mad Dog and Bai Yanran were both amused and touched. Then, they looked at Yi Fei together. After Xiao Chao's reminder, Yi Fei had already known about Jiang Xiaoi's arrival. He was surprised, but he did not stop cultivating. Instead, he continued to concentrate. Suddenly, at this moment, he broke through the last barrier. With a loud bang, the 3rd level of the Dharma of Madness appeared on Yi Fei's body. At the same time, he had broken through to the late Lord of Heaven, and was now only a step away from the Great Lord of Heaven. The Great Lord of Heaven had another title, and that was Half-Step Tao Lord. Finally, I've reached this point as well. Alas, I still haven't completely broken through to become a Tao Lord after joining the Sword Gate. Yi Fei rose to his feet, a rather unhappy look on his face. Upon hearing this, Mad Dog let out a muffled grunt. Bai Yanran was also speechless. However, Compared to Yi Fei, her cultivation speed was indeed too slow. It seems that I should also work hard and cultivate for a period of time. Although Bai Yanran was most powerful in the field of divine inscriptions, the most powerful aspect of a cultivator was their cultivation level. The higher their cultivation level, the stronger their combat prowess. Mad Dog sneered. If we want to cultivate, we need to be able to walk out of the Sword Palace alive. Currently, the Outer Sword Palace has already sealed off the entire Sword Gate. Under the pressure of Rinzhu, the half-step divine lord from the other mountains will definitely not stand up for us. After saying this, Mad Dog pointed at the slovenly Taoist who had been hiding in the palace for several days. Yi Fei shook his head and smiled bitterly. Although he believed that the slovenly Taoist would not abandon him, this time it was not only the divine lords who were against him, but also Rinzhu from the Outer Sword Palace. Even the Inner Sword Palace's attitude towards him had become cold. At this time, just as Niu Hao had said, relying on the slovenly Taoist alone was not enough. At the very least, Yi Fei did not have the confidence to do so. Thinking of this, he looked at Jiang Xiaoyi and said, "Xiaoyi, do you have any way to get us out of the Sword Palace?" "Uncle Yi, I secretly took out a Palace Master token from the Sword Palace. With this token, you will be able to move freely in the Sword Palace. Neither the Inner nor Outer Sword Palace will stop you." Jiang Xiaoyi took out a golden token with the words Palace Master Token written on it in ancient seal script. The words were filled with sword chi and carried a faint killing intent. Yi Fei was even more surprised, but at the same time, a warm current flashed through his heart. After quickly asking Jiang Xiaoyi about the process of entering the Sword Gate, Yi Fei thought for a while and took the token to the palace where the slovenly Taoist was. At this time, the dragon turtle was standing outside the palace gate gloomily, acting as a guard. When it saw Yi Fei coming, the dragon turtle quickly signaled with its eyes that the slovenly Taoist had been inside all this time. But even the dragon turtle could not figure out what the slovenly Taoist was doing inside. Obviously, the slovenly Taoist had asked the dragon turtle to guard outside and had no intention of seeing Yi Fei. Helpless, Yi Fei could only cup his hands and say to the palace, "Senior, the Sword Palace is too aggressive. I can't stay in the Sword Palace. Just now, I accidentally obtained a Palace Master token. It is said that with this token, you can move freely in the Sword Palace and leave the Sword Palace at will." Yi Fei took out the Palace Master token. Suddenly, a big hand reached out from the palace and grabbed it. After a long time, it threw it out and said, "There is no problem with the token. As long as you don't alert Rinzhu, you can leave the Sword Palace directly. That little girl is very considerate." Obviously, although the slovenly Taoist didn't leave the palace, he was very clear about the situation outside. Yi Fei also took the opportunity to ask, "Senior, you said that you can send me away in 10 days. Are you confident?" "Of course. 10 days is more than enough for one of you to leave. However, you insisted on leaving with your companions. That's a bit troublesome. Fortunately, with this Palace Master title plate, you can give it a try." After that, there was no more sound in the palace. No one knew what the slovenly Taoist was busy with. Yi Fei was speechless, but when he saw the Palace Master token fly back to him, he quickly made up his mind. After all, every day he stayed in the Sword Palace was another day of danger for him. After the slovenly Taoist had no choice but to send Yi Fei and the others away at the same time, the Palace Master token became his last hope. Moreover, Jiang Xiaoyi couldn't hide the fact that she had stolen the Palace Master token for long. This also made Yi Fei make up his mind. Thinking of this, Yi Fei returned to the back of the mountain. Mad Dog came up and asked, "How is it, Yi Fei? Are you planning to leave?" "I've decided to use this token to try. Brother Ji Feng, please take Bai Yanran with the token and leave first," Yi Fei said. "You're not leaving?" Bai Yanran was a little surprised. Yi Fei shook his head and said in a low voice, "I can't leave. All eyes in the Sword Palace are focused on me. If I leave, I won't be able to hide it. So, I will stay in the Sword Palace and buy time for you. Only if you leave successfully will I be able to leave without worry." Bai Yanran hesitated when he heard this, But Mad Dog was very straightforward. He took out a mask and handed it to Yi Fei, saying, "I know that I will only be a burden to you if I stay. We can leave first. You must follow us later. This mask is for you." The mask that Mad Dog took out was the phantom mask from the arena of life and death. It could change one's appearance. Anyone below the Divine Lord level would not be able to see through it. Yi Fei's eyes also lit up. He gladly accepted the mask and agreed on a place to meet. Mad Dog and Bai Yanran walked out of the sword gate under Jiang Xiaoyi's lead. Yi Fei pondered for a while and also went down the mountain. Suddenly, he flew quickly in the direction of the sword rampart. Due to the discovery of the sword tomb inside the sword rampart, the Ninth Heaven Sword Rampart had attracted a large number of martial artists. They came to observe and find a way to enter the sword tomb. Therefore, there were many swordsmen comprehending the sword outside the sword rampart. Chapter 24:15. Taking revenge on the Sword Palace. Isn't that Yi Fei? I heard that not only is he a remnant of the Heavenly Palace of Despair, he's also a notorious devil in the City of Divine Kings. Renzu from the Outer Sword Palace has already said that he wants Yi Fei to scram from the Sword Palace. Now, he actually dares to come to the Sword Rampart? Some disciples from the Outer Sword Palace had mocking looks on their faces. Hearing this, the disciples from the Inner Sword Palace lowered their heads. They didn't support Yi Fei like they did before. Even though he had expected this, Yi Fei still felt a chill in his heart. He knew that he was no longer part of the Inner and Outer Sword Palace. But just as the countless disciples from the Sword Palace outside the Sword Rampart were discussing Yi Fei with cold or hostile gazes, there was also a group of people who didn't show any hostility when they saw Yi Fei. They even stood up and clasped their hands respectfully at Yi Fei. "Greetings, Yi Jian Kuei." They still recognized Yi Fei as the Sword Palace Kuei. They didn't change their attitude towards Yi Fei because of the change in attitude of the Inner and Outer Sword Palace. They still looked at Yi Fei with reverence. These people were none other than the swordsmen who had followed Yi Fei into the sword catacomb. Even though they were sword fanatics, they were still grateful. Seeing these people, Yi Fei felt a warm current flow through his heart. He smiled and nodded. The current Sword Palace is filled with mediocre and cowardly people. They don't deserve to be called swordsmen, much less use swords. But from all of you, I can see that there is still a future for the Sword Palace. Yi Fei, what are you saying? You'll be kicked out of the Sword Palace in a few days. Where do you have to guide us? A person walked out from the Outer Sword Palace. He carried a heavy sword and looked very pressured. Seeing this person, many of the swordsmen who supported Yi Fei paled. Oh no, he's Deercry from the Outer Sword Palace. He's stronger than Jian Sansheng, second only to Lani. Stronger than Jian Sansheng? Hearing this, Yi Fei's eyes lit up. He was worried that he wouldn't be able to find someone to show his power, so that he could carry out his revenge on the Sword Palace. Deercry came at the right time. Suddenly, a resplendent sword light erupted from Yi Fei's body. This sword light came too suddenly and too fiercely. Deercry had just stepped out and was about to mock Yi Fei. After all, Yi Fei had lost the support of the Inner Sword Palace. Renzu from the Outer Sword Palace had made it clear that he didn't welcome Yi Fei. If he mocked Yi Fei now, not only would he be able to humiliate Yi Fei, but he would also be able to gain the favor of Xue Qinxiu and maybe Xinjun. Unfortunately, although Deercry's plan was good, he was unlucky enough to meet Yi Fei, who did not play by the rules. In a hurry, Deercry could only roar in fury, and then burst out with all his strength in an attempt to block the attack of Yi Fei's divine sword. Boom! Before anyone could react, Yi Fei's black gold emperor sword had already clashed with Deercry's heavy sword. Two shocking sword lights instantly engulfed the void. Suddenly, Deercry's beast-like roar came from within the sword lights. He actually broke through the sword lights and charged towards Yi Fei. Scram! The rumbling sound of the sword came from Yi Fei's mouth, forming a terrifying sword storm that once again enveloped Deercry. At the same time, the two sword cauldrons fell down like heavy mountains. One sword cauldron shattered Deercry's protective mystique and his sword Dao soul. The other sword cauldron fell like a mountain and smashed into Deercry's body. Deercry's terrifying roar could be heard in the ears of many swordsmen. Boom! In the end, the sword cauldron fell and suppressed Deercry to the ground of the sword wall like a mouse. Deercry stared angrily at Yi Fei. Before he could catch his breath, he spat out blood and fainted on the spot. Yi Fei pretended not to see Deercry, pretending to be unconscious. The Taiji sword cauldron continued to suppress Deercry like a mountain. Yi Fei's body suddenly stepped onto the Taiji sword cauldron and entered the 8 trigrams door. His face darkened as he looked at the terrified warriors around him. "Do you know why I'm so strong?" No one answered, but many swordsmen looked at Yi Fei with expectant eyes. After all, this was the world of martial arts. Even if Rinzhu was suppressing them, respect for the strong was deeply ingrained in the bones of almost every warrior. Yi Fei was a strong person, so he was worthy of respect. My talent is only a small part of the reason why I was able to reach this step and become as strong as I am now. The real reason why I'm so strong is actually due to luck. And now, a shocking, fortuitous encounter is right in front of you. I believe you have all heard that behind the 9-heaven sword wall is the hidden 1,000-sword tomb of the Sword Gate. The reason why I'm so strong is because I entered the 1,000-sword tomb and received personal guidance from the Sword Palace's palace master. I obtained a large number of martial arts mystiques left behind by seniors in the 1,000-sword tomb. Do you want to enter the sword tomb too? Do you want to be as lucky as me? In the end, Yi Fei roared and revealed his main purpose. He had not come to the sword wall to reminisce about the past, but to take revenge on the Sword Palace. Didn't the Sword Palace not allow the sword tomb behind the sword wall to be opened? Then, Yi Fei wanted to open it. Didn't the Sword Palace not allow him to break through to the Dao Lord realm in the Sword Gate? Then, he wanted to plunder the resources of the Sword Gate that could allow him to break through to the Dao Lord realm. At the same time, Yi Fei's words were like thunder, shocking everyone present. When they realized that Yi Fei might lead them to open the sword wall and enter the sword tomb, many of the warriors present immediately became short of breath. "Yi Jiankui, is what you said true? Can you really lead us into the sword wall and the 1,000-sword tomb?" Someone shouted impatiently. Yi Fei also wanted this effect. He nodded firmly and said, "That's right. I will lead all of you into the sword tomb. However, the prerequisite is that each of you must give me 10,000 Xian veins. As long as you give me 10,000 Xian veins, I will lead you into the sword tomb. If you are willing, come over. Black gold Emperor's sword, slay for me." As he spoke, Yi Fei swung his sword and tore a huge hole in the sword wall. It also revealed the mysterious staircase of light inside the sword tomb. When they saw the staircase of light, everyone's breath quickened. Yi Fei also used his strength to prove the great benefits of entering the sword tomb. Immediately, a warrior rushed over excitedly and said, "Yi Jiankui, I want to go in. I am from a flying sky sword faction of the city of 10,000 swords. Can I lead everyone into the sword tomb?" "Of course you can. Each person who enters will get 10,000 Xian veins. If you form a team, you only need 3 people to enter. Each person will only get 9,000 Xian veins. If you introduce your friends and family, you can also get a discount of 1,000 Xian veins." Yi Fei was beaming with happiness. He had a simple and honest smile on his face. Chapter 24:16. A cicada escapes. What did you say? That Yi Fei actually dared to open the sword wall and bring a large number of martial artists inside? Yi Fei's every move couldn't be hidden from the eyes and ears of the Outer Sword Palace. Since the Inner Sword Palace had given up on Yi Fei, the Outer Sword Palace was ready to make a move on Yi Fei. It was only because of the slovenly Taoist persuasion that the Outer Sword Palace reluctantly gave Yi Fei 10 days of buffer time. Moreover, Rinzhu and the Outer Sword Palace believed that even if they gave him 10 more days, Yi Fei would still be trapped in the Sword Palace. Then, he wouldn't be able to escape. In the end, he would have no choice but to obediently hand over what he had gained from the sword wall and the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. The only thing that Renzu in the Outer Sword Palace didn't expect was that Yi Fei would act so unconventionally. Even though he was already under house arrest, Yi Fei didn't think of escaping. Instead, he used his status as a sword champion to open the sword wall and make a fortune. In the Outer Sword Palace, a middle-aged man in a purple robe immediately looked at Maybe, who was kneeling beside him, with a very gloomy expression. I underestimated Yi Fei. He's only doing this to take revenge on our sword palace. Then, he'll escape from the city of 10,000 swords with a large number of mystic veins. Maybe you can't let him get what he wants. Now, bring your men and capture Yi Fei for me. Yi Fei's actions completely made Renzu lose his patience. He decided to ignore the slovenly Taoist and attack Yi Fei first. After all, Yi Fei could control the Ghost Emperor Cauldron when he was only in the Lord of Heaven realm. He could resist a divine lord without dying. If Yi Fei became a divine lord, the consequences would be dire. Renzu's attitude made Maybe overjoyed. Renzu, don't worry. I'll capture Yi Fei personally and make him spit out all the mystic veins he took. However, Yi Fei is easy to capture, but that old Taoist is really difficult to deal with. When a slovenly Taoist was mentioned, even a divine lord like Maybe was a little afraid. Others might not know, but Maybe knew very well how terrifying the slovenly Taoist was before he severed his cultivation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been beaten in the face by the slovenly Taoist with a drumstick and run away. Hearing Maybe's words, Renzu sneered and shook his head. Renzu is old and disabled. Take my Renzu sword with you. Renzu won't dare to make things difficult for you. Even if he does, you don't have to be afraid. Just use your sword and kill Yi Fei. As he spoke, Renzu handed Maybe a shining golden divine sword and left a trace of Renzu's mystique in the sword. Maybe was so excited that his face turned red. As he held the divine sword with both hands, an evil idea formed in his mind. So that old bastard's name is Renzu. He's no longer Renzu, but he still dares to embarrass me in front of everyone and protect Yi Fei. Why don't I maybe take this opportunity? I don't need to ask them to surrender. I could just use this Renzu sword and kill them. Wouldn't that be even better? After he left the palace, Maybe was emboldened. He immediately held the sword and rushed to the sword gate as fast as he could. Inside the palace, Aurora, Renzu, stared at Maybe with a cold glint in his eyes. Renzu is an elder of the Sword Palace for 3 generations. He helped me a lot in the past. If I kill him myself, it will be hard to avoid ridicule. Why don't I borrow Maybe's hand to kill Renzu? Then I'll kill Maybe to atone for my sins. That way, the Sword Palace will have nothing to say. The 9th Heaven Sword Wall was bustling with people entering and exiting the Sword Catacomb. They were all calling their friends. It was very lively. However, Yi Fei was nowhere to be seen at the entrance of the sword wall. The first batch of swordsmen who followed Yi Fei into the sword wall took the place of Yi Fei and collected a large number of mystic veins from the martial artists who entered the sword catacomb. Yi Fei himself collected more than 1 million mystic veins before he stopped and quietly disappeared into the sword wall when no one was paying attention. Deercry, the genius swordsman of the Sword Palace, also disappeared. However, the martial artists who were busy entering the sword catacomb didn't notice. The Downlords of the Sword Palace who were responsible for guarding the sword gate didn't notice either. They only saw Deercry walking from afar with a gloomy face and was about to leave the sword gate. They were a little surprised. Isn't this junior brother Deercry? I heard that you went to the sword wall. Why are you leaving so soon? Don't mention it. Shame. That sword wall is now occupied by Yi Jian. I'm no match for him. I had no choice but to retreat. Deercry covered his face with his sleeves. He walked forward quickly with a face full of shame. The Downlords guarding the Sword Palace looked at each other. Just as they were about to ask more questions, a terrifying aura of a divine lord came from afar. The Downlords guarding the Sword Palace ignored Deercry and said to each other solemnly, "Brace yourselves. It's maybe Shinjun. Yi Fei is in trouble this time." These Downlords could clearly see that Maybe was holding Renzu's weapon. They were all shocked and didn't notice that Deercry, who was walking quickly out of the sword gate, was also shocked. Yi Fei's voice suddenly came out of his mouth. The Sword Palace actually attacked me in advance. Maybe even used Rinzu's weapon. Very well. As long as I don't die, I'll settle this score sooner or later. Without looking back, Yi Fei continued to stride forward. Soon, he was completely out of the Sword Palace and hurried to the east of the city where he had agreed to meet by Yanran and Mad Dog. Of course, when he went out this time, Yi Fei still wore the phantom mask and disguised himself as Deercry. Not long after maybe he entered the sword wall, he suddenly roared angrily, "A bunch of trash. You've all been tricked by Yi Fei. Investigate. Investigate thoroughly. I'll catch Yi Fei even if I have to turn the entire sword gate upside down." Maybe he was really angry. He had excitedly brought Rinzu's weapon here, but Yi Fei had run away ahead of time with 1,000,000 Xian veins. If news of this spread, the entire Sword Palace would become a laughingstock. Only then did the other Sword Palace disciples come to their senses. They began to search the mountains and plains for Yi Fei. Unfortunately, the sword gate was too big. The various mountains were extremely uncooperative with the Sword Palace's search. If maybe didn't have the Sword of Rinzu, these mountains would have joined forces and chased maybe out. The cooperation of these half-step divine lords bought Yi Fei more time. When one of the outer Sword Palace disciples finally found Deercry, who was tied up like a fried dough twist with a rag stuffed in his mouth, maybe Shinjun couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Deercry even shed tears of hatred on the spot. "Marshal Uncle Ma, you have to avenge me. That Yi Fei isn't human. Not only did he defeat me, he even disguised himself as me and robbed me." Chapter 24:17. In the end, the dagger is revealed. He rushed to the east of the city as fast as he could. Xiao Chao's eye of heaven and earth quickly discovered by Yanran, Mad Dog, and Jiang Xiaoi, who were hiding in a restaurant in the east of the city. Yi Fei was not there. He removed the phantom mask and walked in with Deercry's identity. However, a big black turtle followed behind him. Jiang Xiaoi's eyes lit up. She ran over excitedly and opened her arms. Yi Fei sighed as well. Just as he was about to bend down and carry Jiang Xiaoi up, he was dodged. Jiang Xiaoi had already pounced onto the dragon turtle and cried, "Little turtle, you've lost so much weight from starvation." As they spoke, a large pile of pastries was delivered to the dragon turtle's mouth. Yi Fei's expression immediately darkened. The dragon turtle also carefully looked at Yi Fei's expression. In the end, it didn't dare to eat all the food by itself. Instead, it secretly hid a few pieces of pastries for Xiao Chao to try. Only then did Xiao Chao's anger turn into joy. He looked forward to the dragon turtle's secret stash of pastries. Seeing the dragon turtle, by Yanran and Mad Dog also walked over. Mad Dog said in a low voice, "Before you came, we already did some scouting. All the exits of the city of 10,000 swords are guarded by divine emperors from the city of divine kings. The one leading them is Li Yuran." Yi Fei's expression immediately turned serious. Li Moran's intervention meant that the palace of the King of Gods had finally decided to stand against him and officially participate in the fight for the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Furthermore, since the city gates were under control, even if he could escape from the Sword Palace, it would be difficult for him to escape the divine emperors of the city of 10,000 swords. Just as Yi Fei and the other two felt that the situation had become very troublesome, Jiang Xiaoi, who was feeding the dragon turtle, suddenly thought of something. She took out a medallion and said, "Uncle Yi, I can take you all out of the city of 10,000 swords. I have a very good elder sister. She promised me that she is willing to help you leave." As she spoke, Jiang Xiaoi carefully led the way in front. Bai Yanran did not hesitate and immediately followed. Mad Dog was a little hesitant. Xiaoi is still too young, but her performance today is too mature. I'm a little worried. It's useless to worry. We could just stay vigilant. Even if this is a trap, as long as there's a slight chance that we can avoid the divine emperors and leave the city of 10,000 swords, we don't mind betting on him. Yi Fei patted Mad Dog's shoulder forcefully, his eyes full of deep meaning. Mad Dog was stunned for a moment, but did not say anything. He only grinned and strode forward. In the distance, Bai Yanran had already begun to urge them. Jiang Xiaoyi was also very excited as she rode the dragon turtle through the buildings in the east of the city. After breaking through the Lord of Heaven, the dragon turtle's speed became even faster. Soon, the dragon turtle carried Jiang Xiaoyi and arrived in front of a very luxurious mansion. Jiang Xiaoyi pointed at the mansion and said, "This is the place. The sister inside is very good to me." She said that her family has a super teleportation formation that leads directly to the Crimson Moon Holy Dynasty. As long as we use this formation, Sister Bai, and you can leave the city of 10,000 swords. Jiang Xiaoyi's face was still young and naive. She did not understand the sinister nature of the human heart. When they saw the place that Jiang Xiaoyi brought them to, Yi Fei and Mad Dog's faces changed drastically. Bai Yanran also covered his mouth and whispered, "Lawn Mansion? Could this be the mansion of the #1 family in the city of 10,000 swords? The Lawn family?" It said that the Lawn family is a branch of the Nalan family in the Holy Dynasty. Lan Yi and Xue Qinxiu are lovers. What? Xue Qinxiu? Then there's no need to stay here. Mad Dog said in a low voice. He pulled Jiang Xiaoyi and was about to leave. At this moment, a man and a woman suddenly walked out of the quiet lawn mansion. They were like a golden couple. This man and woman were naturally Xue Qinxiu and Lan Yi. Seeing that Yi Fei and the others were about to leave, Xue Qinxiu's face could not help but show some coldness and killing intent. "Brother Yi, since you're here, why are you in such a hurry to leave? It won't be too late to leave after you leave with your life. Qinxiu, didn't you say that you don't want Yi Fei to die in the hands of others and that you want to defeat him personally? That's why you asked me to find a way to send them to the Crimson Moon Holy Dynasty?" Lan Yi was stunned. This was not what Xue Qinxiu had said before. Hearing this, Xue Qinxiu smiled apologetically. He shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, Lan Yi. I lied to you. You're kinder. If I said that I wanted to target Yi Fei from the beginning, you might not have the heart to use a little girl like Jiang Xiaoyi to deceive Yi Fei. That's right. I don't want Yi Fei to die in the hands of others because I want him to die in my hands." "Sister Lan Yi, how dare you lie to me?" Although Jiang Xiaoyi was young, she was not ignorant. Xue Qinxiu's words made her realize that she had been used by Lan Yi. Faced with Jiang Xiaoyi's accusation, Lan Yi could not help but blush. Although she was kinder, she was also Xue Qinxiu's girlfriend. Even though she knew that what she did was wrong, she still decided to stand on Xue Qinxiu's side. "Xiaoyi, it's my fault for lying to you. I did this for Qinxiu. Come on my side now. I promise that no one will hurt you." Lan Yi wanted to take Jiang Xiaoyi away. Jiang Xiaoyi did not pay attention to them. Instead, she cried, "Uncle Yi, big sister Bai, crazy uncle, it's all my fault. I'm the one who caused you all to step into the trap." As she spoke, Jiang Xiaoyi's head was already lowered. She appeared to be blaming herself. However, when Jiang Xiaoyi lowered her head, a warm hand was suddenly placed on her head and forcefully rubbed it. "Xiaoyi, raise your head. It's not your fault this time. You just wanted to save us so much that you fell into Xue Qinxiu's trap. Actually, I already knew that this might be a scam. Yi Fei, since you knew it was a trap, why didn't you warn us? Why did you still come here?" Bai Yanran was so angry that she suddenly wanted to kick Yi Fei. Yi Fei was very depressed. He continued to rub Jiang Xiaoyi's head and comforted her, "Because I wanted to teach Xiaoyi one last lesson before I leave. No matter how sinister a person's heart is, Jiang Xiaoyi, remember this. When you cultivate in the Sword Palace, you must not easily trust a person. You must know that in this world, the most sinister thing is not a tiger. The sinister nature of a person's heart is greater than the tiger's. Uncle Yi, I'll remember this. Hurry up and leave. I don't want you to die." The little girl raised her head. Her eyes were already red and swollen from crying. She even took the initiative to grab Yi Fei's hand, wanting to pull Yi Fei along and escape quickly. Seeing this, Xue Qinxiu sneered. His tone turned cold as he said, "Yi Fei, you can leave, but you must leave behind 3 things. 1. Your black gold Emperor's sword. 2. Your ghost Emperor cauldron. 3. Your life." "You want my life?" Shueqinxiu, are you sure you have the ability to do so? Yi Fei suddenly turned around. Like a furious dragon turning its head, he was filled with powerful sword aura and pressure. Beside him, Lani's expression changed. Just sensing the sword aura made her feel as though her breathing had stopped. Chapter 24:18. The runic puppet Li Moran. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Back then, it was this person who had targeted him and forced him to leave the city of the Divine Kings and lose the chance to meet Zhao Yu. Now, it was this same person who had colluded with Shueqinxiu to set up this trap. Jiang Xiaoi grabbed Yi Fei's hand nervously. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog looked like they were facing a great enemy. Facing a powerful divine lord from the palace of the Divine Kings, no one dared to let their guard down. Yi Fei, we meet again. Do you still remember what I said before? A small fish will always be a small fish. Even if he jumped out of the ditch and entered the river or the sea, he will still be a small fish. Li Moran looked indifferent. He didn't seem to care about Yi Fei, only the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Clap, clap, clap. Shueqinxiu suddenly clapped and echoed Li Moran. Divine Lord Mo Ran, you are absolutely right. Yi Fei, you came from the wilderness. No matter how strong you are, you can't change your background. If you hand over the Black Golden Emperor sword to me, I will not attack your two friends. If you want to attack us, you have to have the ability to do so. Dong. Mad Dog's aura was strong, filled with the pressure of a divine lord. Bai Yanran's beautiful eyes flashed coldly as she met Lanyi's gaze. The two women's gazes collided, creating sparks. At the moment when the sparks collided, Li Moran attacked. No one knew what agreement Li Moran and Shueqinxiu had reached that made Shueqinxiu avoid the Sword Palace and choose to join forces with Li Moran to deal with Yi Fei. But no matter what choice Shueqinxiu made, Lanyi believed that, as his girlfriend, she had to obey. Therefore, Lanyi also attacked. A strong sword light appeared in her hand. Like a waterfall, it pierced forward with the power of the Milky Way. Blue Sky Divine Dragon Dance. Bai Yanran shouted. Sword chi spread out from her body like falling petals, forming a magnificent sword dance. This dance seemed to have a magical power that blocked Lanyi's Milky Way sword. Lanyi couldn't help but be shocked. All along, only Yi Fei had attacked in the Sword Palace, so people had neglected the terrifying strength of Mad Dog and Bai Yanran. Shueqinxiu's expression turned serious. Suddenly, he looked at Jian Sansheng behind him. Sansheng, I'm counting on you. It's okay. You're my good friend. Your business is my business. Moreover, the person we're dealing with this time is Yi Fei. Kill. The half-dragon sword's soul suddenly appeared behind the crown prince of the Sword Kingdom. It was stronger and more dazzling than half a year ago. Jian Sansheng, as the Lord of Heaven, attacked Mad Dog, who was a divine lord. Heaven-tearing Earth Hand. Mad Dog laughed cruelly out of habit. His claws were even more terrifying, and his aura was even crazier. With a demonic aura, Mad Dog grabbed Jian Sansheng's sword soul with his bare hands. He wanted to tear it apart. Jian Sansheng roared in anger. Seeing that the situation was not right, Ma Fong, who was watching the battle, suddenly drew her sword and launched a sneak attack from behind Mad Dog. However, Mad Dog didn't even look back. He suddenly grabbed at the void with both hands. The entire void was suddenly filled with terrifying claw shadows. He was like a wild beast that had gone completely crazy. He wasn't at a disadvantage, even though he was fighting one against two. What a pity. You're strong, but you chose the wrong team. In the end, they will not be able to escape death. Li Moran was high and mighty, like a divine king, looking down on the world and Yi Fei. His hand turned into a giant, ghostly hand that blotted out the sky and came crashing down. He wanted to kill Yi Fei with one hand. Yi Fei's face flashed with anger. He didn't say anything. Instead, he took out the Ghost Emperor Cauldron in the shortest time possible and released a dazzling light. Yi Fei also stepped into the Ghost Emperor Cauldron in an instant. He maximized the power of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and rushed to the sky to attack Li Moran. Bam! In the end, The Ghost Emperor Cauldron collided with the Ghost Hand. A deep crack appeared on the Ghost Hand. Yi Fei immediately took advantage of the crack. The black gold Emperor's sword in his hand suddenly roared out like a black dragon. The entire void was filled with the sound of the sword. It shook the world and the stars. It also slashed at Li Moran's body. The Divine Emperor's eyes suddenly burst with terrifying anger. "Trash, get down. You don't deserve to stand in the same sky as me." A huge roar came from the void. Li Moran walked in the void like a god. He sent out a huge flaming palm and slammed it down again. This time, Li Moran was really angry. Before the palm landed, the terrifying pressure of the Divine Emperor had already caused Yi Fei's sword light to completely collapse. Even the Ghost Emperor Cauldron was trembling, as if it couldn't withstand the Divine Emperor's attack. Yi Fei still gritted his teeth and refused to retreat. After all, when facing a Divine Emperor, he would die if he retreated. He would also die if he advanced. He would rather die fighting. "Old man, if you don't come out, I'll really die." When Yi Fei attacked, he didn't forget to roar at the void. Hearing this roar, Li Moran's expression suddenly turned cold and sarcastic. "You're about to die, and you still want to play tricks? I'm not playing tricks. Watch your back." Yi Fei sneered. He suddenly used all his strength to control the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and slammed it towards Xue Qianxiu, who was not far away. "You're courting death." Almost at the same time, Xue Qianxiu and Li Moran let out furious roars. Even their auras were very similar at this moment. But in the midst of the intense battle, Yi Fei didn't have time to pay attention to these details. He only saw that when Li Moran's ghostly palm was about to land on him, a special puppet with 4 faces and 8 arms suddenly walked out of the void. This puppet was made of divine materials and was covered with countless divine inscriptions. Many of them were innate divine inscriptions. At the same time, the puppet held 8 different divine swords in its hands. These divine swords were all burning with divine inscriptions and glowing with divine light. With just one sword, it split open the heavens and earth, as well as Li Moran's flaming palm. Who dares to interfere in the affairs of the palace of the King of Gods? Li Moran was furious. He had paid a huge price to lure Yi Fei here and was prepared to kill him in one fell swoop. But in the end, a 4-faced, 8-armed divine inscriptions puppet had appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, the offensive power of this puppet was very terrifying. The 4 faces could see in all directions without any blind spots. The 8 arms could also use 8 different Lord God martial arts at the same time. When these martial arts were combined, it was equivalent to 8 Lord Gods attacking at the same time. That kind of deterrence made Li Moran, who was used to seeing storms, change his expression on the spot. Yi Fei and Xiao Chao were so shocked that their mouths were agape. Chapter 24:19. No mercy in the Sword Palace. The one who attacked was the slovenly Taoist, who did not appear in person. Due to unknown reasons, the slovenly Taoist was unable to leave the Sword's Gate. However, the slovenly Taoist used another method to protect Yi Fei. A mere puppet. "No matter who you are, you will not be able to stop me." Li Moran roared. Above the void, the broken flaming palm suddenly turned into countless fire dragons. These fire dragons had claws like the wind and flames like light. Between heaven and earth, there were terrifying dragon roars everywhere. It seemed to have turned this place into a world of fire dragons. Suddenly, the 4-faced puppets raised their swords at the same time. Boundless sword light swept up 8 dazzling sword storms that tore apart heaven and earth and shattered the stars. The whistling sword wind formed a spatial storm that extinguished the fire dragons in the sky. Li Moran wasn't afraid at all. At this moment, his body was burning with flames that soared into the sky. The temperature of these flames was extremely terrifying, and it even burned the void. The surrounding sword wind dissipated before it even got close to the flames. Even the wind could dissipate. This was the terror of a divine lord. What was a divine monarch? Surpassing ordinary people, transcending the mortal world, and becoming a saint. This was a divine monarch. Kill! Lee Moran roared furiously. It was not enough to shatter the sword wind. The terrifying flame condensed into a huge, flaming divine saber in the void. Lee Moran grabbed the saber in his hand. In an instant, the saber shook the heavenly Tao and shocked the hearts of countless warriors. That was because the space they were in had been sliced in half. This was the terrifying aspect of the flame God King slash. It was a supreme technique of the God King Palace. Only those at the Divine Lord realm or above could use its true power. At this moment, this terrifying divine saber slashed furiously on the body of the four-faced puppet, forming a special divine fire that could melt the void. Lee Moran was like a divine king who had walked out of a chaotic world. He raised his saber and stood with his head held high. His eyes were filled with the pity and pride of a king facing a beggar. He raised his saber and walked step by step toward Yifei. Trash, this is your reinforcement? I have to say, it really disappointed me. Don't worry, it won't disappoint you. It will only give you a huge surprise. Yifei sneered. He was not afraid of Lee Moran's threatening gaze. Suddenly, Lee Moran's expression became extremely ugly. He no longer paid attention to Yifei. Without even turning his head, he waved the flaming divine saber and a slash behind him. Behind him, a four-faced puppet with blazing divine flames had silently appeared behind Lee Moran. Rumble. Between heaven and earth, there was a loud roar of thunder. It was not real thunder and lightning, but the lightning-like sword light formed by the divine swords of the four puppets. This sword light was like lightning, tearing apart the sky and Lee Moran's neat clothes. Lee Moran immediately let out a furious roar. Kill! I don't care who you are, but you've completely angered me. Die! Dazzling divine saber. Dance of the troubled times. Lee Moran stood together with the four-faced puppet that had appeared. He could no longer target Yifei. Yifei heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. At the same time, his eyes were filled with a shocking, murderous intent. Without the suppression of the Lord of Gods, he easily charged towards Xue Qianxiu from the sky with the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. At the same time, Xue Qianxiu was also filled with a shocking anger. Yifei, today, I will use your blood to wash away the shame of my defeat. Kill him. Xue Qianxiu did not attack personally because he clearly knew the difference between him and Yifei. It was also this difference that made Xue Qianxiu unable to tolerate Yifei's life. Hearing his words, more than 10 half-step monarch god experts rushed out from the Lan family. These experts were all dressed in black and had their faces covered. It was obvious that they did not want others to know their identities. However, although these people had their faces covered, they could not hide the fluctuation of their dark force. Xiao Chao's divine eyes of heaven and earth quickly discovered their identities. Xiao Chao quickly gestured to remind them. You are all from the Inner Sword Palace. Yifei's face was filled with shock. Xiao Chao actually discovered the aura of the Inner Sword Palace token on these black-robed men. This token was also their identity token. Yifei would never have thought that not only did the Outer Sword Palace attack him, even the Inner Sword Palace was secretly involved. As for why the Inner Sword Palace didn't attack him in the Outer Sword Palace, it was because he had saved Jiang Xiaoyi and the entire city knew about it. Thus, the Inner Sword Palace and the Inner Sword Palace could only work together, one in the light and one in the dark. They couldn't attack him openly. Inner Sword Palace? Impossible. Why will my father's palace do this? Jiang Xiaoyi's face was filled with tears. At this moment, she was undoubtedly in the most pain. Yifei had saved her, but her biological father wanted to kill Yifei. Bam! At the same time that Jiang Xiaoyi spoke, the masked Inner Sword Palace half-step divine sovereign sneered and attacked at the same time. All kinds of divine abilities swept across the land like violent storms and engulfed Yifei. Golden body of despair. Yifei's angry roar suddenly came from the whirlpool of divine abilities. He did not blame the Outer Sword Palace for attacking him, but the Inner Sword Palace had actually joined forces with Xue Qianxiu and Lee Moran to attack him. This made Yi Fei feel a chill run down his spine. Then, he was thoroughly enraged. This sword palace is no longer the sword palace where Big Sister Sword Soul resides. Sword Protector Renzu, since your inner sword palace is heartless, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Ghost Emperor Cauldron, kill him. Under Yi Fei's feet, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron glowed with a dark light. It was like the gates of hell had opened in the 9 hells, filled with the mysterious power of ghosts and gods. Suddenly, it charged at a half-step divine sovereign. The half-step divine sovereign laughed coldly. A short sword slid out from his black cufflinks like a viper and bit at Yi Fei's vitals. Scram! Yi Fei did not even look at it. He only stepped on the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and used all his strength to charge forward. The power of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron had already bent and broken the half-step divine sovereign's short sword. This is impossible. The half-step divine sovereign's face was filled with deep shock. He could not believe that Yi Fei could use the Lord of Heaven to block the attack of a half-step divine sovereign like him. Xue Qianxiu, who was standing in the distance, had a shocking cold light flash across his face. Then it was followed by deep greed. This is the Ghost Emperor Cauldron that the divine sovereigns of the city of divine monarchs want. Its power is actually this terrifying. Very well, I want this cauldron. If he had this cauldron, even if he had to face a storm, Xue Qianxiu would have nothing to fear. Senior brothers, please kill this person for me. Xue Qianxiu shouted anxiously from behind. Chapter 2420. Battle Madness. Therefore, no matter how strong Yi Fei's Ghost Emperor Cauldron was, these masked half-step divine lords didn't back down. They continued their frenzied attacks. At the same time, as Yi Fei's Ghost Emperor Cauldron crashed into Yi Fei, these half-step divine lords also attacked Yi Fei's main body. Yi Fei's expression immediately changed. Then he no longer cared about chasing down the injured half-step divine lords. He roared angrily, and endless purple-gold flames erupted from his body, forming a dazzling purple-gold barrier that protected him and the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Within the gates of the abyss, 2 mysterious Taiji sword cauldrons appeared behind Yi Fei. With a powerful howl, they transformed into a dazzling Taiji sword diagram, suppressing the void and suppressing the mystiques that were approaching. At this moment, countless beams of mystique light had already blasted over. There were countless thunderous booms as the area Yi Fei was in collapsed. Space was torn apart, and countless mystiques formed a turbulent flow of mystiques. These turbulent flows easily shattered Yi Fei's Taiji sword cauldron and Yi Fei's purple gold barrier. Even the Ghost Emperor Cauldron couldn't withstand the pressure and began to tremble. In the end, there were far too many people attacking Yi Fei. Even with the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, it was still very difficult for Yi Fei to withstand them all. In fact, Yi Fei had already prepared himself to suffer heavy injuries. At this time, one of the faces of the 4-faced puppets fighting in the air suddenly opened and angrily cursed. Foolish brat, to think that you can face so many half-step divine lords by yourself. Are you the reincarnation of the human ancestor, or are you possessed by some fiend god? Hurry up and throw your drumsticks. Boom! The slovenly Taoist's words suddenly reminded Yi Fei. Only then did Yi Fei remember that he still had a drumstick that the slovenly Taoist had given him. As the drumstick had been eaten too cleanly, even the dragon turtle couldn't be bothered to eat it, so Yi Fei had been carrying it with him all this time. At this time, after the slovenly Taoist's reminder, Yi Fei hurriedly took out the drumstick and subconsciously injected profound energy into it. The drumstick instantly turned into a sharp sword of light that flew out of his palm and slashed forward. Not good. It's that old fellow's drumstick. Everyone be careful. When they saw what Yi Fei had thrown out, the half-step divine lords surrounding Yi Fei paled and quickly retreated. No one dared to take the sword light that burst from the drumstick. Yi Fei couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. In the void, the second face of the 4-faced puppet suddenly opened again and continued to scold. I say, are you stupid or not? Everyone has already moved aside. Hurry up and run. Remember, rush into the lawn family. There is a super teleportation array that leads directly to the Crimson Moon Holy Dynasty inside. Yi Fei's face turned dark. However, the slovenly Taoist had good intentions. Yi Fei naturally wouldn't reject it. Taking advantage of the fact that the half-step divine lord around him were forced to retreat by the sword light, Yi Fei hurriedly released the azure dragon wings and instantly rushed to the place where Bai Yanran and Lan Yi were fighting. Seeing Yi Fei coming over, Bai Yanran's face lit up. She happily glanced at Yi Fei and said, "At least you have some conscience and know to come and save me first." As she spoke, Bai Yanran's sword dance became even faster. She was like a sword fairy, dazzling and dancing while rapidly approaching Yi Fei. On the other side, Lan Yi's face changed drastically. "Qinxiu, save me." A sword suddenly came. The one who attacked wasn't Xue Qinxiu, but another masked swordsman. In the beast mark space, Xiao Chao suddenly let out a cry of alarm. From the masked swordsman, Xiao Chao sensed a familiar and powerful aura of a divine lord. "It's divine lord Niu Hao. Even you want to deal with me?" Yi Fei's face changed drastically, and there was a dull pain in his heart. The masked swordsman who attacked also had a complicated look in his eyes. However, he didn't say anything. He only slashed out a sword light that was even stronger and filled with a murderous aura. Niu Hao actually had the intention to kill? Yi Fei didn't know why, but there was a sudden feeling of grief in his heart. "Senior Niu, I treat you as a senior and respect you. However, you have the intention to kill me. Forgive my rudeness. This battle, crazy demon, roar." In the face of Niu Hao's divine lord attack, Yi Fei finally stopped hiding. On the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, he directly ignited his bloodline and activated the crazy demon battle technique that he had just mastered. This battle technique instantly broke through Yi Fei's shackles and broke through the divine nebula diagram that sealed his bloodline. In an instant, an extremely violent bloodline divine flame erupted from Yi Fei's body. Feeling this divine flame, the Ghost Emperor Cauldron suddenly trembled with extreme excitement. The entire Ghost Gate became tall and mysterious when Yi Fei's bloodline was ignited. This gave Yi Fei an illusion that as his bloodline broke through the limit, the cracks on the Ghost Emperor Cauldron seemed to have healed. Feeling blessed, he roared angrily and stepped on the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. He charged forward and collided with Niu Hao's divine lord attack. Niu Hao was shocked to discover that his divine lord sword light couldn't break through the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and hurt Yi Fei's body. Instead, Yi Fei's black gold emperor sword was mercilessly raised and brought down as it rushed in front of him. With a tearing sound, the sword light tore through the black mask on Niu Hao's face, revealing his shocked and helpless expression. "Yi Fei, don't blame me. I didn't want to kill you. However, the Sword Palace no longer has a place for you. Actually, you shouldn't have opened the sword wall today. You shouldn't have mixed up with Long Ta." The sword fell and pierced Niu Hao's body. However, Niu Hao smiled. Despite his injuries, he allowed the sword light to blast him down from the sky. Yi Fei couldn't help but be stunned. He looked deeply at the falling Niu Hao. "Senior Niu, thank you." Yi Fei muttered in his heart. He raised his sword and continued walking. Suddenly, he rushed towards Xue Qinxiu. He knew that the best way to escape from this difficult battle was to capture Xue Qinxiu. As long as Xue Qinxiu was in his hands, the people inside and outside the Sword Palace would not dare to attack him directly. Seeing that Niu Hao had only made one move and deliberately allowed Yi Fei to stab him down from the sky, Xue Qinxiu's expression turned gloomy. At the same time, he suddenly sensed the danger he was in. Seeing Yi Fei's terrifying Ghost Emperor Cauldron, Xue Qinxiu finally gave up on fighting Yi Fei. Instead, he thought of the same idea as Yi Fei, which was to capture a hostage and threaten Yi Fei. Therefore, just before Yi Fei rushed towards him, Xue Qinxiu had already released his sky-ripping sword soul and rushed towards Bai Yanran. He wanted to capture Bai Yanran and threaten Yi Fei. "How dare you?" In the void, Yi Fei was shocked and furious. The powerful undying sword soul appeared behind him. Endless sword power, mighty and mighty, rushed forward. The azure dragon wings, burning with flames, rushed in front of Xue Qianqiu again. Xue Qianqiu's face suddenly flashed with a sinister look. Yi Fei, I, Xue Qianqiu, swear that no matter what, I will kill you today. Chapter 24-21. Sword Light reappears. Lan Yi had never thought that the person she liked, the person she had invested in, would make such a move at such a critical moment. Therefore, facing Yi Fei's Sword Light, Lan Yi was in extreme grief and indignation, forgetting to use her sword to block. The terrifying Sword Light had already surrounded Lan Yi. Xue Qianqiu also let out a sorrowful roar and attacked Bai Yanran recklessly. He pushed Lan Yi out because only by injuring her could he force the neutral experts of the Lan family to come out and deal with Yi Fei together. Capturing Bai Yanran was to make Yi Fei hesitate and not use the Ghost Emperor Cauldron to kill him. Unfortunately, although Xue Qianqiu's idea was good, he had neglected Bai Yanran's true strength. After all, Bai Yanran, who did not reveal her true identity, was from the Heavenly Palace of Despair. At this moment, under the attack of Xue Qianqiu's terrifying sky-splitting sword soul, Bai Yanran's sword dance was shattered. She finally stopped hiding and unleashed her golden body of despair. A layer of purple gold light suddenly appeared beside Bai Yanran and protected Bai Yanran like a gorgeous battle suit. No matter how strong Xue Qianqiu's sky-splitting sword soul was, he was only a late-stage Lord of Heaven after all. His realm was similar to Bai Yanran's, and the sky-splitting sword soul's attack power was only at the mid-stage Dao Lord realm. His sword could tear apart the defense of an ordinary mid-stage Dao Lord, but it could not tear apart Bai Yanran's golden body. Bam! Everyone only saw Xue Qianqiu's sword slashing Bai Yanran's body. Not only was she not injured, but Bai Yanran cleverly used the rebounding force to retreat quickly. She then approached Yi Fei. The half-step divine lords of the Inner Sword Palace all revealed looks of shock. Gosh, these three people, other than Yi Fei, Bai Yanran, and Ji Feng, are all so powerful. She's just an arrow at the end of its flight. She's just a woman. Even if she's lucky enough to learn the golden body of despair, she's still no match for Xue Qianqiu. There were also half-step divine lords who didn't think highly of Bai Yanran. They were even eager to charge forward and continue attacking Yi Fei. However, the bloodline power that Yi Fei had erupted with was too terrifying. Even Divine Lord Niu Hao had been injured by a single sword strike. They couldn't help but hesitate. At this moment, Xue Qianqiu's angry roar suddenly rang out in the void. I admit that I lost Yi Fei. I don't believe that I, Xue Qianqiu, can't capture a woman like you. Space Splitter Cross Sword. In his fury, Xue Qianqiu actually burned his bloodline and used his strongest divine ability. At this moment, he didn't care if this would kill Bai Yanran. There was only the word victory in his heart. Lan Yi, your taste is really bad. On the other side of the void, Yi Fei held his sword in one hand and strangled Lan Yi's neck with the other. He didn't show any mercy. Yi Fei had already thrown Lan Yi into the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and completely suppressed her. At the same time, Xue Qianqiu's Space Splitter Cross Sword collided with Bai Yanran's innate divine pattern cauldron again. The entire cauldron was instantly shattered by the Space Splitter Sword spirit. Although Bai Yanran could still resist with the golden body of despair, she still hadn't condensed her own divine ability will. With a flash of sword light, Bai Yanran's golden body was shattered by Xue Qianqiu's sword. Blood flowed from the corner of Bai Yanran's mouth. However, Xue Qianqiu still didn't want to stop. He was in a frenzy and immediately burned the Space Splitter Sword spirit behind him instinctively. The Space Splitter Sword spirit whistled and turned into a ray of light, trying to penetrate Bai Yanran's body. Jian Sansheng and Ma Feng also suddenly gave up their fight with Mad Dog. The two of them actually joined forces and attacked Yi Fei, preventing Yi Fei from rescuing Bai Yanran. Within the Lan family, after Lan Yi was captured alive by Yi Fei, the Lan family experts who had remained neutral rushed out and attacked Yi Fei, trying to save Lan Yi. However, Sir God Nyohao hesitated for a while and suddenly ordered, Miss E is still in Yi Fei's hands. Let's retreat quickly and not provoke Yi Fei too much. But Renzu ordered us to cooperate fully with the palace of the King of Gods to kill Yi Fei. Some of the half-step gods didn't understand Nyohao's order. Nyohao's expression suddenly turned cold. He pointed to the sky and said, the palace of the King of Gods, Lan family, Shui Qianxiu, so many forces are attacking Yi Fei. Even if he has the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, he won't be able to escape death. What difference does it make whether we attack or not? Retreat and ensure Miss Yi's safety first. After saying that, Nyohao quickly retreated and rushed towards Jiang Xiaoyi. Kid, this is the only thing I can help you with. Whether you live or die, it will depend on your own abilities. Senior Nyo, thank you. Hearing Nyohao's telepathic message, Yi Fei's spirit was shaken. As he ignited his bloodline, his immortal sword soul also burned fiercely at this moment. It formed a destructive sword light and slashed forward. Jian Sansheng, who had just rushed out, immediately changed his expression. He recognized that this was the strongest sword move that Yi Fei had used to defeat Shui Qianxiu. The immortal sword emperor, Jian Sansheng's footsteps became hesitant due to the strong sense of danger. He had lost to Yi Fei before, and this had left a psychological shadow in Jian Sansheng's heart. At this moment, this psychological shadow was magnifying in Jian Sansheng's heart. As a result, a huge flaw appeared in the divine sword that he and Ma Fong had used together. Yi Fei immediately took advantage of this flaw, and the whistling sword light instantly enveloped Ma Fong. Ma Fong couldn't help but reveal a look of fear. Only now did she realize that Jian Sansheng, who had been fighting alongside her, had abandoned her and hid behind her. As for her, she had taken on the full power of the undying monarch's sword all by herself. Then, a cloud of blood mist exploded in the sky. With just one sword move, Ma Fong was completely engulfed by the sword light. Jian Sansheng's face was filled with great sorrow and regret. Tears suddenly streamed down his face as he let out a shrill cry. The whistling sword light transformed into the sword aura of the 3 lifetimes, 3 absolutes, and charged wildly at Yi Fei. Ma Fong's death made Jian Sansheng remorseful and enraged. Jian Sansheng couldn't accept the fact that he had caused Ma Fong's death. Therefore, he subconsciously pushed all the blame onto Yi Fei. You killed my girlfriend, Yi Mo, I want you dead. Jian Sansheng summoned his courage and burned his half-dragon sword soul as he charged madly at Yi Fei. However, such an attack posed little threat to Yi Fei, who had broken through the limits of his bloodline and released the demonic battle technique. The whistling Ghost Emperor Cauldron glowed with a deep dark light like a dark star. Yi Fei lifted it up and smashed it violently. Jian Sansheng's half-dragon sword soul was smashed to pieces once again, along with the sword light of the 3 lifetimes, 3 absolutes. The void burned with blood. Jian Sansheng spat out a mouthful of blood in shock and terror as he frantically retreated. Chapter 24-22. Father and Son Roar. Suddenly, the dragon turtle's roar came from afar. Yi Fei quickly scanned the area with his divine sense and saw that Bai Yanran and Ji Feng were fighting Shui Qianxiu. Even with the dragon turtle's help, Shui Qianxiu was completely suppressed. Bai Yanran's innate divine pattern cauldron was no match for Shui Qianxiu's space-shattering crossblade. Moreover, Shui Qianxiu had the sky-splitting sword spirit, which was very special. When fully activated, the sky-splitting sword spirit could not only split the air, but also split itself into more sword spirits. These sword spirits roared with each other and formed a special sword spirit formation around Shui Qianxiu. Not only did it trap Bai Yanran, but it also struck 4 times in a row, shattering Mad Dog's sharp claws and annihilating the dragon turtle's poisonous wind. In the end, a bright cross-shaped sword light fell from the sky and enveloped Mad Dog and the dragon turtle. I'm Shui Qianxiu. I only want that woman. Whoever stops me must die. In the torn void, Shui Qianxiu didn't even look at Mad Dog and the dragon turtle. He just sneered and grabbed Bai Yanran with his bare hands. Yi Fei captured my woman and suppressed Lanyi. I'm going to capture you and suppress you too. Realizing that it couldn't resist, the dragon turtle immediately sent a distress signal to Yi Fei. The moment Yi Fei heard the signal, his body suddenly stopped and then turned around. The azure dragon's wings were also raised to the limit. Yi Fei was like a sword light. Without even looking at Jian Sansheng, who was severely injured, he rushed towards Xue Qinxiu with only anger. He didn't even look at me. This lowly commoner, this country bumpkin, he actually started to ignore me, the crown prince of the Sword Nation. Jian Sansheng's eyes were red. He blamed himself for Ma Fong's death, and Yi Fei's disregard made him feel even worse than killing him. Jian Sansheng couldn't admit that he and Yi Fei were people from two different worlds. The only thing he could do was to stare at the front at the experts of the Lan family. These experts were all half-step divine monarchs. They didn't come to save Lanyi. They came to stop Yi Fei. Squeak. In the beast mark space, Xiao Chao suddenly became very nervous. If Yi Fei couldn't break through these obstacles, not only would Bai Yanran be captured, Mad Dog and the Dragon Turtle's lives might be in danger. Xiao Chao, don't worry. I won't let anything happen to the Dragon Turtle, Bai Yanran and Mad Dog. You are all my most important companions. Since you are my companions, then it's worth it. I'll protect you with my life and fight for you. I want to go completely crazy. Roar. Yi Fei suddenly let out a terrifying demonic sound. The demonic battle technique was pushed to the limit by him and completely broke through the seal placed on his bloodline by the innate star map. When the seal was completely broken, an extremely dangerous and violent aura was released from Yi Fei's body. Above the Sky Palace, the Fate Wheel turned into a demonic sun, and the Sky Bridge turned into a demonic bridge. The strong demonic impact caused Yi Fei's divine soul to be distorted to a certain extent. The black gold Emperor sword in his hand trembled violently at this moment, as if it had turned into a demonic sword. Kill! Yi Fei no longer spoke in a human voice, but the sound of a demonic sword. This sound shattered the void and shattered the supernatural powers. A huge bloody sword radiance surged out from Yi Fei's body like a torch. In the vast sky, a huge bloody sword was slashed out. This bloody sword was the deity's tribulation. One sword could kill a true god. When such a sword burst out from Yi Fei's body, Lord God Niuhao suddenly widened his eyes in horror. This is impossible. It's already the limit for a person to have two natural mystiques. This Yi Fei actually has 3 natural mystiques. Moreover, the power of the third natural mystique has already reached the level of a Lord God's attack. What? A Lord God's attack? This Yi Fei is just an itinerant cultivator. How can he be so strong? The surrounding half-step god lords all revealed looks of disbelief. The half-step god lords from the Lan family who attacked Yi Fei were even more shocked. They did not dare to block the light of the deity's tribulation blood sword. At this moment, they suddenly scattered and stopped blocking Yi Fei. Moreover, they unintentionally exposed Xue Qinxiu behind him. Xue Qinxiu was so angry that he vomited blood. Yi Fei's possession of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron was already abnormal enough. Now that he had unleashed a natural mystique that was comparable to a Lord God's attack, Xue Qinxiu actually had the illusion that he was facing a storm. At this moment, Xue Qinxiu's hand was only a step away from Bai Yanran. As long as he took this step, he would be able to catch Bai Yanran. However, at the same time, if he made a move, the deity's tribulation blood sword would definitely kill him. After weighing the pros and cons, Xue Qinxiu decisively gave up on catching Bai Yanran. Instead, he retreated at lightning speed, wanting to avoid the light of the deity's tribulation blood sword. Kill! Yi Fei's demonic voice was vast and mighty. The sword soul was like a demon, causing the deity's tribulation blood sword to become like a real god's blood. The sword light condensed from real god's blood continued to mercilessly slash forward. Xue Qinxiu, who was retreating, had a clear look of fear and shock on his face. Xue Qinxiu felt that he could not block this sword light. The intense humiliation made Xue Qinxiu furious. The strong threat of death made him cry for help and terror. "Oh no, father, save me." Shwe Chincho actually asked Moran, who was in the sky, for help. Moreover, the way he addressed Moran caused many people to be shocked and in disbelief. Shwe Chincho and Moran were father and son? It was no wonder that Shwe Chincho, a genius of the Outer Sword Palace, would hide from the Outer Sword Palace and collude with the Inner Sword Palace. Moreover, he cooperated so well with Moran. Even though he was under the control of the demonic nature, Yi Fei was also shocked. So that's how it is. They are father and son. But even so, Shwe Chincho still has to die. Deity's tribulation, / Bastard, how dare you? Moran's furious roar suddenly resounded in the sky. Shwe Chincho was his only son and was more important than Du Chong. Moran decisively abandoned the battle with a four-faced puppet. He gritted his teeth and suddenly dove down. When he was in front of Shwe Chincho, a terrifying ghostly hand with violent killing intent grabbed at the deity's tribulation bloodsword. With a loud bang, the deity's tribulation bloodsword was actually shattered by Moran's ghostly hand. Yi Fei was shocked. His rationality told him that he was still no match for Moran, but his demonic nature made it impossible for him to retreat. Just as Yi Fei's rationality and demonic nature were clashing, a four-faced puppet suddenly descended from the sky. The third face emitted a demonic sword sound. Why aren't you getting lost? If you die, won't the sword master's hope be cut off? Chapter 24-23. Scourge. After crossing this transmission array, Yi Fei would be able to leave the city of 10,000 swords. And even faster, he would be able to cross countless territories and directly teleport to the Red Lunar Divine Dynasty's capital city, Red Lunar City. Where do you think you're going? How dare you hurt Chincho? I'll take your life. Moran was enraged when the ghost hand was blocked by the four-faced puppets. He suddenly raised his saber and charged forward like the god of chaos. The whistling flaming saber aura split the void in half. The four-faced puppet wasn't afraid at all. Its three faces roared at the same time, and its 8 arms brandished their swords. This time, the puppet was using a sword dance, and it was the exact same sword dance as the 9 Heaven Sword Sovereign. The heavens have spirits, the swords have souls, the swords have souls, the swords have souls, the swords move the 9 underworlds. The four-faced puppets spun their swords, like a sword god descending into the river of stars, like a god descending upon a true devil. In the end, this crazy sword dance actually produced endless illusions. It completely enveloped Moran, Niu Hao, everyone present, and even the entire Lan family. It was just that maintaining such illusions consumed a terrifying amount of energy. The four-faced puppet's dazzling dance burned its body, its divine runes, and even the wisp of soul that controlled the puppet. Yi Fei's soul couldn't help but tremble. "Senior, scram. You're too unlucky, brat. I'm already at the age of eating chicken, and I still have to come out and clean up your ass." The final face of the four-faced puppet opened, and it cursed. Yi Fei was so touched that he wanted to throw it out and feed it to the dogs. "Yi Fei, let's go." Mad Dog and by Yanran rode the dragon turtle and quickly ran over from afar. However, Jiang Xiaoi was firmly protected by Niu Hao and could not be taken away. Seeing this, Yi Fei could only take a deep breath. Suddenly, he solemnly bowed to the four-faced puppet that was about to collapse. "Senior, although your words are unpleasant and your mouth stinks, I will remember this kindness." After finishing his words, Yi Fei stepped on the Ghost Emperor Cauldron and rushed into the Lan family. Behind him was the dragon turtle that was running fast. Even further away, the four-faced puppet's cursing could be heard. "Brat, who did you say has a mouth translation? Come see how I'll beat you." Boom. While the old Taoist was cursing, the 2 divine lords, Moran and Niu Hao, were the first to break free from the influence of the sword dance illusion. They were simultaneously enraged as they charged towards the four-sided puppets. Within the Lan family, there were actually several powerful half-step divine lords. But because they were too far away, the effects of the illusion were weak. They also broke free from the illusion and charged at Yi Fei with incomparable rage. "Yemo, let go of my young miss. If you want Lanyi's life, you'd better not stop us." On the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, Yi Fei suddenly reached out and grabbed Lanyi, who was being suppressed, out of the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Just like that, he used her as a shield. Lanyi was restrained and couldn't use her dark force. She could only scream in anger. The Lan family's half-step godlords also had a drastic change in expression. They didn't dare to attack Yi Fei anymore. They could only watch as the four people and the turtle rushed towards the super teleportation platform. Yi Fei also quickly took out a large amount of dark veins and fused them into the teleportation platform. The entire teleportation platform shone brightly. Like a dazzling star, enveloped them. They broke through the void and rushed out of the city of 10,000 swords. It was also at this moment that a huge palm suddenly reached out from the city of 10,000 swords and slapped towards the teleportation light. One could only hear intense divine inscriptions vibrating. This huge palm actually smashed the tail flame of the teleportation light into pieces. This also directly affected the teleportation distance. When the teleportation light ended, Yi Fei was shocked to find that he had already appeared in a desolate wilderness. Around him were countless huge trees. Around him were countless spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. Occasionally, he could also see many exotic flowers and plants. At the same time, Crimson Moon Ancient Capital, a luxurious chariot, surrounded by hundreds of Lord of Heaven and Tao Lords, slowly entered the city gate of Crimson Moon Ancient Capital. At the city gate, there was a handsome young man with an extraordinary aura. He cupped his hands towards the chariot and said, "Little nephew greets Qiuyun Renzu. No need to be so polite. You are my sister's son, which means you are my nephew. Let's talk in the chariot. What do you think?" On the chariot, other than Qiuyun Renzu, there was also a devastatingly beautiful woman. Even though the woman was wearing a veil, it couldn't hide her astonishing beauty. The handsome man couldn't help but feel a trace of excitement and passion in his heart. How he wished he could get on the chariot right now and ride with the beauty. However, a cold voice came from the chariot. "Master, I'm tired." After that, there was no more sound from the chariot. The handsome man's expression showed obvious disappointment. He looked at Qiuyun Renzu, hoping that this aunt of his would say a few good words for him. However, Qiuyun Renzu obviously doted on Zhao Yu more than the handsome man. Even though she knew that Zhao Yu was rejecting her, Qiuyun Renzu didn't blame her at all. She just let the handsome man ride the chariot outside. In the chariot, Zhao Yu still didn't say a word. She just stared blankly at the sky outside the window. A year had passed very quickly. She didn't know if he had escaped the pursuit of those divine lords. She didn't know if he was doing well in the distance. If it was possible, she really wanted to leave the divine king's palace and look for him, even if she had to give up everything. However, when she saw Qiuyun Renzu's loving eyes, Zhao Yu sighed again. All this time, Qiuyun Renzu had treated her like her own daughter. How could she just leave like that? Why? Are you thinking about that commoner called Yi Fei again? How many times do you want me to tell you that it's impossible between you and him? You and him are people from two different worlds. Your best partner should have the hope of breaking through Renzu. Those true geniuses like Feng Yun and the princes of the divine dynasty. You shouldn't be a small rogue cultivator. You're still young now, so you can't let go of this relationship. When you become the champion of the Earth Carnage ranking and break through to the half-step Divine Lord realm, or even the Divine Lord realm, you will clearly see how big the gap between you and Yi Fei is. Qiuyun Renzu tried her best to persuade Zhao Yu. She really treated Zhao Yu as her own daughter. She also hoped that Zhao Yu could find the best partner. However, when she heard this, Zhao Yu didn't reply. She just shed a tear. This tear instantly ruined Qiuyun Renzu's good mood. As a Renzu, she didn't care about a rogue cultivator who wasn't even a divine lord. However, this rogue cultivator had actually seduced Zhao Yu and made her feel sad all day long. Qiuyun Renzu's heart ached for Yi Fei. At the same time, she also felt great dissatisfaction and disgust towards him. Chapter 24:24. Ice Snow Forest in a cave somewhere, Yi-Fei sneezed. Due to the light of the teleportation and the Rinzu level attack, the super teleportation array of the Lan clan did not send Yi-Fei and the rest to the Scarlet Moon ancient capital. Instead, they were teleported to an unfamiliar ice snow forest. This forest was very strange. Everywhere was covered in ice and snow. Heavy snow was falling from the sky all the time. The extreme cold made it so that except for special ice trees, not a single blade of grass grew. Even ferocious beasts would be instantly frozen if they walked in if their realm was too low. Left with no other choice, Yi-Fei could only let the dragon turtle dig a temporary cave for the group to hide in. Bai Yanran, Brother Ji-Feng, do you know what kind of forest this is and where we are? Yi-Fei asked in front of the raging bonfire. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog smiled bitterly at the same time. Although they came from the Heaven Realm, one of them had been in the Lord Pan Palace since young, while the other had been in the arena of life and death since young. They really did not know the origin of this ice snow forest. Lanyi, whose cultivation was sealed, felt the horrifying cold air of the ice snow forest and was deep in thought. However, she did not say anything and only lowered her head silently. Yi-Fei did not care about Lanyi's thoughts. Although he did not know the exact location, he still had to continue cultivating. Yi-Fei thought for a while and suggested, "This ice-snow forest is very strange. We should not go out rashly. How about this? Every day, one of us will go out to explore, while the rest of us will stay here and cultivate diligently. This is also to prepare for the Earth Carnage Proclamation." Not only was it the slovenly Taoist who participated in the Earth Carnage Proclamation, it was also the request of Yi-Fei. It was also Yi-Fei who took the initiative to participate. This was because if he obtained a good ranking on the Earth Carnage Proclamation, not only could he completely wash away his identity as a surviving member of the Heavenly Palace of Despair, he could also make use of the enormous power of the Scarlet Moon Divine Dynasty to search for the whereabouts of Shangluo and Wang Bai. This was much more effective than Yi-Fei relying on himself to search. Mad Dog nodded and was about to head out to explore. After all, his realm was the highest here. Bai Yanran's thoughts were more meticulous. She said worriedly, "This method can work, but this forest only has the power of ice and snow. I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to convert it into the mystic energy we need." Mad Dog's brows immediately furrowed. However, Yi-Fei smiled and said, "It's fine. Absorbing the power of ice and snow is too difficult. Then we will directly use the mystic veins to cultivate. Bai Yanran, this is yours. Big Brother Ji-Feng, this is yours." Yi-Fei was like a rich man. He took out a large amount of mystic veins from his spatial belt and gave Mad Dog and Bai Yanran 500,000 mystic veins in one go. Mad Dog was so shocked that his eyelids twitched. Bai Yanran also widened her eyes in shock. "Yi-Fei, you couldn't have ransacked the Sword Palace's treasury, right?" Even Lanyi looked at Yi-Fei suspiciously. In her heart, she already regarded Yi-Fei as a great demon. Yi-Fei was very depressed. He had no choice but to briefly recount the process of opening the sword wall and taking revenge on the Sword Palace. Even so, Bai Yanran and Mad Dog were dumbfounded. When faced with the Sword Palace's coercion, they should be thankful that they were able to escape successfully. In the end, Yi-Fei was even better. Before he escaped, he even took advantage of the opportunity to ransack the Sword Palace. "Yi-Fei, it's definitely a miracle that you weren't killed on the spot by Renzu of the Sword Palace." Bai Yanran sighed. "I finally understand why the sect master insists that I'm your master even though I'm older than you." Ji-Feng's face was also full of fear. After all, Yi-Fei's ransacking this time was so ruthless that after the Sword Palace's investigation, the two Divine Lords, Niu Hao and Maybe, were so heartbroken that they couldn't sleep well for a few days. More importantly, Yi-Fei's act of opening the sword wall was equivalent to destroying the Thousand Sword Tomb. After all, with so many warriors flocking in, no matter how many swords there were in the Sword Tomb, there wouldn't be enough for everyone to share. At this moment, the dragon turtle suddenly felt lucky. In the sword tomb, the dragon turtle had stolen dozens of top-level swords in one go. If it refined these swords, it might even have a chance to become a Tao Lord. It thought that it had found an excuse to eat more. So when Yi Fei was distributing the Xian veins, the dragon turtle actively moved its black mouth over and licked Yi Fei's face. The licking made Yi Fei angry. He could only hurriedly throw out 100,000 Xian veins and let the dragon turtle eat as it pleased. Squeak! Seeing that the dragon turtle had Xian veins to eat, Xiao Chao didn't ask for them in the beastmark space. It just blinked its big black eyes and looked at Yi Fei cutely. Yi Fei's heart melted. He could only hold back his tears and give Xiao Chao another 100,000 Xian veins in one go. In addition, he needed a large number of Xian veins to break through to the peak of the Lord of Heaven and 1,000,000 Xian veins to cultivate the Tao Lord's golden body of despair. Yi Fei suddenly realized that his Xian veins were starting to be insufficient again. Sigh, it seems that the entry fee I charge at the sword wall is still too low. Yi Fei said emotionally. What he heard about by Yanran and Mad Dog, he was speechless. He simply did what he was supposed to do. Bai Yanran ran to her cave to cultivate. Mad Dog had already broken through to the Tao Lord realm and was not in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, he went out to explore the path out of the forest. Only Lanyi was left behind. Yi Fei thought for a while and suddenly strode towards Lanyi. He carried her with one hand and strode towards his cave. Lanyi, who was prejudiced by her first impression of Yi Fei, finally screamed in fear when she saw Yi Fei carrying her and walking towards his cave. Yi Fei, if you dare to insult me, my Lan family will not let you off. The Nalan family will not let you off either. As she spoke, Lanyi bit Yi Fei's chest fiercely. However, her cultivation was sealed. Even if she bit him, she could not hurt Yi Fei at all. However, Yi Fei was very depressed when he heard her words. He admitted that this woman, Lanyi, was indeed very beautiful. However, it was not to the point where he would have bad thoughts about her. At the same time, he recalled how Lanyi had deceived Jiang Xiaoi. Immediately, he became furious and slapped her. Lanyi was so angry that her body trembled and her face turned red. However, she did not dare to make any sound. She was afraid that she would agitate Yi Fei and make him attack her. However, Yi Fei did not attack her. After slapping her, Lanyi also became obedient. He simply threw her on the ground and minded his own business. He sat down and started cultivating. Blackie, watch her. Roar? The dragon turtle's face was ashen. It wanted to refuse, but seeing that she had entered a crazy state of forgetfulness when she started cultivating, the dragon turtle could only stare at Lanyi as if she was facing a great enemy. It felt that this was not enough. The dragon turtle simply slapped Lanyi on the ground. Then, the dragon turtle raised its head, and at the same time, it had already pressed Lanyi on the ground with its butt. Not only was she unable to use her Xian energy, she could not even move. Lanyi was so angry that she fainted on the spot. She was a beauty after all. However, Yi Fei did not have any protective feelings for her. Not only did he hit her, he even let a black turtle sit on her. Lanyi was so ashamed that she even wanted to commit suicide. She quickly screamed and shouted, "Demon Yi, you are ruthless. I know the way out of Snow Forest. Let me go and I will tell you." Boom. Chapter 24-25. Lord of Heaven's perfection. Yi Fei's surging Xian meridians turned into streams of light and flowed into his body. He began to cultivate silently. In order to break through from the late Lord of Heaven to the Lord of Heaven's perfection, he needed a large number of Xian meridians to break through to the next realm. More importantly, he needed to comprehend the laws. Yi Fei began to gradually form his own three-layered laws. On the other side, Bai Yanran was doing the same. He was completely immersed in comprehending the laws. Only Mad Dog took the lead and walked out of the cave to find a way out of this snowy forest. Mad Dog was also very fast. Years of fighting in the arena of life and death had cultivated Mad Dog's beast-like instincts. Although the snowy forest covered a very large area, and the snow made it difficult to tell the specific direction, Mad Dog still managed to find a way out. However, Mad Dog's beastly instincts allowed him to quickly find a man-made glacial passageway. He followed the passageway and continued forward. Gradually, the snow began to disappear. On the ground in the distance, rows of stone houses appeared. These houses were very simple and unadorned. There were also unique, mysterious runes carved on them. There are actually people here. Mad Dog was secretly surprised and began to approach these stone houses. In the cave, Yi Fei's cultivation had also reached the most critical juncture. Relying on the accumulation of a large number of Xian meridians, Yi Fei's late-stage Lord of Heaven realm gradually began to loosen. At the same time, due to the cultivation of the Mad Demon battle technique, a special law gradually emerged in Yi Fei's mind. This law was the Mad Demon Law, and it was the three-layered Mad Demon Law. Once this law was fully formed, Yi Fei was certain that he would definitely be able to break through to the perfected Lord of Heaven and become a true half-step Tao Lord. Not only would his strength improve tremendously, but it would also be of great help to him in breaking through to the Tao Lord realm. This was because once he broke through to the perfected Lord of Heaven, Yi Fei's soul would be able to follow this bridge to the Tao Mountain. As long as he crossed this Tao Mountain, he would be able to ascend rapidly and truly become a Tao Lord. Right now, my true combat strength has long reached the level of a late-stage Tao Lord. If I have the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, even an ordinary Divine Lord won't be able to kill me. I wonder if I can pass this Tao Mountain in one go. At the end of the endless bridge, Yi Fei's divine soul carried the imperishable sword token on his back. He was currently looking at the impassable Tao Mountain in front of him. This Tao Mountain was the first obstacle for the Heaven Realm martial artists. Countless genius martial artists sighed as they faced the Tao Mountain. Even if they used their entire lives, they wouldn't be able to cross it and become a true Tao Lord. Yi Fei hesitated for a while. In the end, he still didn't try to cross this Tao Mountain. After all, he had just reached the perfected Lord of Heaven. If he wanted to take another step forward and cross this Tao Mountain, he would need to make more preparations. His divine soul turned around and walked across the magnificent bridge. In reality, Yi Fei also opened his eyes. After ending this cultivation session, Lan Yi happened to see Yi Fei's crazed expression when he opened his eyes. She was so frightened that she almost screamed again. The dragon turtle on her body was also shocked. It thought that Lan Yi had broken through the shackles and was about to start resisting. The turtle couldn't help but sit down even harder. Lan Yi's face turned red, and she was incomparably frantic. Yi Fei, let me go. I can tell you the way out of this forest. What? You know the way out? Yi Fei was a little surprised. Then, his face darkened, and he said, Tell me, and I can let you go. Lan Yi's expression was complicated. However, in order to get rid of the turtle as soon as possible, she gritted her teeth and said in a deep voice, This is the Nalan family's ranch, the Ice Valley. There are many ice beasts here. Without the Nalan family's permission, outsiders who step in will be attacked by the Nalan family's warriors. In that case, your Lan family's super teleportation array should have teleported us to the real Nalan family. However, because Rinzhu interfered with the teleportation array, we weren't teleported to the Nalan family. Instead, we were teleported to the Nalan family's ranch. Which Rinzhu did this? Why did he do this? Yi Fei's expression was uncertain. However, he still let the dragon turtle let go of Lan Yi. Only then did Lan Yi hold back her shame and anger. She stood up and said coldly, You're so smart, but you still don't understand Sword Protector Rinzhu's intention. He wants to kill you with a borrowed knife. He doesn't want to deal with you personally and become a laughingstock. Therefore, he wants to use the Nalan family's power to kill you. You may not know this, but the Ice Valley is the Nalan family's forbidden area. Without permission, even I will be killed if I step in. This was also the reason why Lan Yi was willing to tell Yi Fei all this. Although Sword Protector Rinzhu wanted to kill Yi Fei, Lan Yi was indeed implicated. Hearing this, Yi Fei's expression became serious. He didn't completely believe Lan Yi's words. Instead, he asked in a deep voice, Since this is the Nalan family's forbidden area, How do you know the way out? Lonnie's expression was strange. She said coldly, "You actually don't know the origin of our Lon family. Our ancestors were responsible for guarding the Ice Valley for generations and rearing all kinds of ice and snow monsters. Although we later moved to the city of 10,000 swords, we still have many ancient books about the Ice Valley in our family." Yi Fei could tell that Lonnie wasn't lying this time. His heart couldn't help but sink. He suddenly regretted letting Mad Dog scout the way out. If Mad Dog accidentally encountered the warriors of the Nayland family, it would undoubtedly alert the enemy. "No, I have to go out and find Brother Ji Feng. Bai Yinran, look after Lonnie." Yi Fei looked anxious and transmitted his voice to Bai Yinran's cave. At this moment, he didn't care if he would disturb Bai Yinran's cultivation. Hearing Yi Fei's transmission, Bai Yinran also walked out in confusion. "Yi Fei, what happened?" Boom! Before they could speak, the whole ground suddenly trembled violently. Yi Fei and Bai Yinran's expression changed at the same time. Lanyi's face was even paler. She said in horror, "It's over. Your whereabouts must have been discovered by the guardian families of the Ice Valley. Entering the forbidden area without a token is a capital offense. Shut up. Our lives are in our own hands. It's not up to the Nayland family to decide our life and death. Breaking into the Ice Valley means certain death. Today, I'm going to break in." Yi Fei's expression was cold. He suddenly put on the phantom mask on his face. In the beast-marked space, Xiao Chao also instantly opened the heavenly eyes of heaven and earth. He just glanced outside. Suddenly, Xiao Chao pointed his finger in a direction. "E. Xiao Chao shouted anxiously, because Xiao Chao's heavenly eyes of heaven and earth found that Mad Dog, who went out to explore, was being chased by a man covered in snow-white fur. Therefore, Xiao Chao didn't have time to gesture. He just shouted a warning. Bai Yinran next to him was stunned. This was not the first time she heard a little girl's voice coming from Yi Fei's body. But before she could react, suddenly a black mouth came over and said in a rough voice, Bai Yinran was instantly speechless. Chapter 24-26. Nayland Snow Demon Yi Fei was shocked. Although Mad Dog wasn't as strong as him, he was still a Tao Lord and could defeat anyone of the same level. However, Mad Dog was actually coughing up blood while being chased by a Lord of Heaven. In particular, the aura that the man exuded was not the aura of a human at all. It was more like a humanoid demonic beast. Seeing this, Xiao Cao's eyes widened in amazement. She held the Rat-Tan sword in her hand and was eager to see if she could beat this man. Xiao Cao's divine eyes of the world, which had always been successful, had actually been discovered by this snow demon-like man. His figure, which was chasing after the Mad Dog, suddenly paused. His ice-cold eyes suddenly shot towards Yi Fei. Boom! When the light shot out from his eyes, the cold chi of the entire snow forest was attracted. Following his gaze, the cold chi gathered into two terrifying icy light pillars. They were like the aurora in the snowy night as they shot towards Yi Fei. Yi Fei's expression could not help but become much more serious. No wonder Big Brother Ji Feng wasn't a match for this man. He can actually mobilize the power of the snow forest. Kill! Black Gold Emperor Sword. Yi Fei shouted as the sword light in his hand erupted with boundless desolation. With just one slash, the two pillars of ice and snow were completely annihilated. In the distance, Mad Dog wasn't happy when he saw this. Instead, he shouted anxiously, "Be careful. This man can use snow escape. His eyes are his escape route." Unfortunately, the Mad Dog's warning was clearly a step too late. Just as Yi Fei was about to extinguish the icy pillar of light, the devilish snowman unleashed some sort of divine ability, causing Yi Fei's escape light to appear wherever he looked. Almost as soon as the pillars of ice and snow disappeared, the man appeared in front of Yi Fei. A frost-spiked mace made of ice and snow appeared in his hand as he smashed it towards Yi Fei's head. Get lost! Yi Fei's gaze turned cold. He immediately swung the black gold emperor sword in his hand again and clashed with the frost-spiked mace. Then Yi Fei felt a huge force that caused his body to involuntarily retreat, leaving deep marks in the snow. This also shocked by Yanran and the dragon turtle. This was the first time they saw someone who could surpass Yi Fei in terms of strength. Lanyi, who followed closely behind, screamed in horror, "Snow demon! You are Snow Demon Nalan!" Lanyi, who is this Snow Demon Nalan? Mad Dog wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth as he rushed over and asked loudly. Lanyi's face turned very pale. She explained intermittently, "Snow Demon Nalan, the monster of the Nalan family. It is said that he was born half human and half demon. He has a cold personality and doesn't recognize his family. Therefore, he was abandoned in the snow forest long ago to fend for himself. Our Lan family's ancestors were ordered to guard him. He actually didn't die and even successfully awakened the blood of the snow demon in his body." Lanyi's words were a little incoherent, but it still made everyone understand the origin and strength of Snow Demon Nalan. Yi Fei finally understood why he suddenly lost to this person in terms of pure strength. It turned out that this person had the blood of a demon and was a natural demon. And the strongest thing about a demon was its physical strength. However, this person's divine power is so strong that it can't be purely physical strength. Part of it must be that this ice forest is increasing the power of his demonic blood. Yi Fei saw that after Nalan Shui Yao pushed him back, the power of ice and snow in the surroundings was automatically absorbed by him, causing him to release even stronger divine power fluctuations. Yi Fei roughly understood that the source of Nalan Shui Yao's power was probably this ice forest. This was also the reason why Mad Dog was so thoroughly defeated. Because Mad Dog wasn't just fighting Snow Demon Nalan, he was also fighting the entire snow forest at the same time. Bang! In the void, there was another explosion. The Black Gold Emperor's sword collided with the mace once again. Yi Fei's body suddenly emitted a dazzling purple gold light. At this critical moment, Yi Fei finally exploded with his strongest power, the golden body of despair. When the purple gold flames burned, Yi Fei seemed to have turned into an ancient war demon, ignoring everything and destroying everything. The collision between the monarch sword and the wolf tooth mace caused the void to shatter. However, Yi Fei's body didn't move at all. He was like an enraged war demon. With a backhand slash, he forced Nalan Shui Yao to retreat a few steps. Although Nalan Shui Yao had instinctively absorbed the ice snow forest cold chi to strengthen his defense, being forced back by Yi Fei still caused him to be filled with shock. "You are worth it. I will kill you." Snow Demon Nalan finally opened his mouth. His words were filled with merciless coldness and killing intent. Then, he once again crossed the distance of a few hundred meters and charged towards Yi Fei. "Big Black, take the others and run." Yi Fei exploded with his divine power and continued to fight with Snow Demon Nalan. However, this time, he was no match for him. After all, Snow Demon Nalan had too much of an advantage in the snow forest. Not only could he borrow the power of the entire forest to fight, but there were also a large number of Nalan family warriors who heard the commotion and chased after him from afar. At this time, if he stayed, he would only be surrounded and waiting for death. The best way was to break out as soon as possible. Therefore, when the dragon turtle brought Ji Feng by Yanran and Lanyi away, Yi Fei had no choice but to take out the Ghost Emperor Cauldron again. The Black Ghost Emperor Cauldron emitted the light of the underworld and erected the Ghost God Door. Accompanied by a violent roar, Yi Fei smashed it heavily onto the ground. The entire ice snow forest shook violently. Space trembled, cracks appeared on the ground, and countless trees fell. The snowy mountain also shook and rolled due to the explosion. All of this took a long time to describe, but in the instant that Yi Fei smashed the ghostly Emperor Cauldron into the ground, a terrifying avalanche had already erupted in the entire forest of ice and snow. It shrank as far as the eye could see, and ice and snow were flowing rapidly in the sky and on the ground. This ice and snow flooded the earth and covered the void. Even Nalan Shui Yao, who could control the snow forest, was surprised by the huge avalanche in the forest. The warriors of the Nalan family who had rushed over were all cursing loudly. Where did this demon come from? How dare he come to my Nalan family and cause trouble? Stop if you have the guts. You must be executed for trespassing into the snow forest. Oh my God, that demon is so ruthless. He actually created an avalanche in the snow forest. All of our houses will be demolished by him. That damn demon. Chapter 24-27. Reunion of old friends. The avalanche in the ice-snow forest could stop the warriors of the Nalan family. But it couldn't stop Yi Fei, who had the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Amidst the snow and ice, a ghost gate protected Yi Fei, Mad Dog, Bai Yanran, and the Dragon Turtle. Under Lanyi's guidance, they quickly left the ice-snow forest. At the periphery of the forest, far away, Yi Fei saw a magnificent imperial city. This imperial city was the Crimson Moon Divine Dynasty's ancient capital, and also the place where the Earth Carnage Proclamation began. Even though the contest for the Earth Carnage Proclamation had yet to begin at this time, the martial artists that came from all over the Divine Continent were already in an endless stream. They were all scholars who had come to the capital for the imperial examinations. According to the rules of the Crimson Moon God Dynasty, every time a young martial artist entered the Earth Carnage Proclamation, they would be able to obtain the opportunity to become an official in the Crimson Moon God Dynasty. There was even a chance to become the ruler of a city or even a country. Although the current Red Moon Divine Dynasty had suffered a great loss due to the battle with Earthly Emperor and had formed the top 10 forces in the Divine Land, the other 10 forces still couldn't compete with the Red Moon Divine Dynasty alone. Sometimes, these forces often used the banner of the Red Moon Divine Dynasty to eradicate their dissidents and expand their forces. For example, the Heavenly Palace of Despair was completely destroyed under such circumstances. Of course, Yi Fei didn't know about this. It was Lanyi who told them along the way. In order to get rid of Yi Fei's evil clutches, Lanyi was very obedient and cooperative along the way. She answered all of Yi Fei's questions. Therefore, Yi Fei also got a lot of information about Red Moon Divine Dynasty. Yimo, the ancient capital of the Crimson Moon Holy Dynasty, is right in front of us. I have done what I should have done along the way. Now, can you let me go? Lanyi said in a muffled voice as she pointed at the heavenly palace-like gate in front of them. Yi Fei glanced at Bai Yanran and Mad Dog, and both of them nodded at the same time. After all, it was Xue Qianxiu who was against them. Lanyi was not the mastermind, and it was thanks to her that they were able to leave the ice forest quickly. Thinking of this, Yi Fei released Lanyi from her imprisonment and said, "Now, you are free. It's a small world. Qianxiu will not let you off. And that black turtle, just you wait, I will slaughter you and eat your meat one day." Lanyi did not hate Yi Fei. She was actually filled with great resentment towards the dragon turtle. Lanyi's gaze was Lanyi's. Lanyi's gaze was filled with hatred. Hatred made the dragon turtle's hair stood. Lane. Turtle felt Lanyi's Lanyi's Lanyi. On Elent Teasby. Lanyi was on and this made Yi Fei sigh. Red Moon Divine Dynasty is indeed the #1 divine dynasty in Heaven Realm. Just the strength of this ancient capital is enough to sweep the world. Brother Yi, I don't agree with your words. Red Moon Divine Dynasty is enough to sweep the Divine Continent, but Heaven Realm doesn't only have Divine Continent. There are 9 layers of heaven, each layer of heaven, each layer of power. Red Moon Divine Dynasty only controls 1 layer of heaven. A young man with a heroic aura came out of a restaurant not far away. Seeing this young man, Yi Fei's eyes lit up. "Wujia, why are you here?" Isn't the Earth Carnage Proclamation about to begin? The Divine Monarch Elder of the Jade Palace ordered us to come here earlier to understand the opponents this time. Not only me, the Yinyang Palace, the Royal Soldier Mountain, and the Warlord Palace that Kid Zhanfeng is in are all here. Wu Jie was very happy to meet his old friends after a long time. He took Yi Fei's hand and dragged him to the restaurant. At the same time, he looked at Bai Yanran and Mad Dog behind Yi Fei and asked, "Who are these people?" "Brother Yi, Aren't you in Divine King City? Why didn't you come with the team from Divine King Palace? I even went to look for Ziyue and asked her. This is Ji Feng. This is by Yanran. They are my brothers and sisters who have gone through life and death with me. As for Divine King Palace, it's a long story. Yi Fei sighed. In the restaurant, he told them everything that happened in Divine King City. He didn't hide the matter of Ghost Emperor Cauldron, which surprised by Yanran and Mad Dog. What surprised them even more was Wu Jie's attitude. Hearing the power of Ghost Emperor Cauldron, he was only shocked for a while and then stomped his feet again and again. Brother Yi, it's a pity. Your Ghost Emperor Cauldron is overbearing, but the Earth Carnage Proclamation competition forbids the use of treasures. If you want to get a good ranking, you have to rely on your own strength. Otherwise, your Ghost Emperor Cauldron can suppress the momentum of the competition. Wu Jie's face was full of regret. He knew that Ghost Emperor Cauldron was precious, but he didn't have the slightest greed. He didn't even have the heart to borrow it. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog were surprised. They understood why Yi Fei had such a good relationship with Wu Jie. The two of them let down their guard and began to befriend Wu Jie. Wu Jie was also very happy. He was especially interested in the fact that Mad Dog came from the deathmatch arena. In the Crimson Moon Divine Dynasty, there's also a deathmatch arena. Many of us who entered the Imperial City will go there to spar and understand each other's strength in advance. It's just a pity that Fengyan has already broken through to the Divine Lord realm. He won't be participating in the Earth Carnage Proclamation this time. Otherwise, I would like to have a real battle with Fengyan, Wu Jie said with a fanatical look. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog were speechless when they heard it. After all, Yi Fei was a battle maniac who stirred up trouble everywhere. Wu Jie was actually the same. It was no wonder that these two people would become good friends. This was what it meant by birds of a feather flocking together. At the same time, the Earth Carnage Proclamation this time had gathered almost all the young experts in the entire Divine Prefecture. Wu Jie himself seemed to be very well informed. Yi Fei's heart involuntarily stirred as he probed. Wu Jie, I would like to ask you to help me find a few people. I wonder if you can help me inquire around in the Imperial City. Yi Fei, if you treat me as a brother, don't say please. Don't be so pretentious. Who are you looking for? Just say it directly. Don't you know that our Merak Palace has an intelligence hall that specializes in inquiring about information? Wu Jie said casually. Yi Fei no longer hesitated and directly activated the memory sorcery. In his mind, there were already a few figures walking out. One of them had 4 frowning eyebrows. His whole person was despicable. At first glance, it made people want to beat him up. The second one was weird. He was still chewing on a spirit melon. When he saw Wu Jie, he was stunned. The third one had a berserk aura, like an angry god. The fourth one was like a god. He was majestic without being angry. His whole body emitted eternal light. Wu Jie, it's these 4 people. Can you help me inquire about them? It's a small matter. You guys call the manager of the Imperial City Intelligence Hall for me. Chapter 24-28. Dejected Deity. Do you know the whereabouts of Deity? Yi Fei was secretly disappointed. He had hoped to find Wang Bai and Shanglua the most, but he had not expected to receive news of Deity in advance. However, Deity was the only earthly venerate in Deity Palace in the Earth Domain, and he was also Zhao Yu's father. Later on, when the God of Heaven entered the Heaven Realm, he also followed Zhao Yu's footsteps and wanted to find Zhao Yu. Therefore, the probability of finding the God of Heaven first was indeed much higher than the others. Understanding this point, Yi Fei put away his disappointment and hurriedly asked, "Where is the God of Heaven now? Young Master Yi, please follow me. The person you speak of is also not a heavenly deity. Instead, he is merely a coachman who makes a living in the Imperial City." The words of the Intelligence Hall's head came as a great shock to Yi Fei. One of the 2 strongest earthly venerates in the Earth Domain had actually become a coachman in the Heaven Domain. How could this be done by Deity? One had to know that the Tian Fa Quasi-Emperor had once said that there were only 2 people in the Earth Domain who were good at scheming. One was himself, and the other was Deity, Yi Fei could not imagine what it would be like for deity to become a coachman. But after all, he had become sworn brothers with both deity and deity in the Earth Domain's human race's stronghold. Deity was also related to Zhao Yu by blood. Therefore, no matter what, Yi Fei did not wish to see deity become a coachman in the imperial city. Immediately, Yi Fei said to Wu Jie, "Wu Jie, please lend me your information hall master. It's fine. Just let him lead the way. Wu Jie, think that I'm already very arrogant. But it turns out that you, an old friend, are even more arrogant than me. How dare you call yourself deity? I have to go and see for myself." As he spoke, Wu Jie's fighting spirit and Dao monarch aura erupted from his body. Yi Fei was very depressed. He had worked himself to death in the Sword Palace to gather enough profound veins to break through to Dao monarch. He hadn't dared to immediately break through, but Wu Jie had silently walked ahead of him. This was the advantage of a large faction. Compared to a large faction, Yi Fei felt that his days as an itinerant cultivator were too tough. Looks like I'll have to find an opportunity to rescue the Nine Heavens Swordmaster. That way, I'll have the Swordmaster and the Sword Palace to back me up. Let alone searching for him. Even breaking through would be much easier. Putting down their wine cups, Yi Fei and the others followed the head of the information hall and quickly headed towards the east side of the Imperial City. Young Master Yi, be careful. The East Imperial City is an aristocratic area. Those who can live there are not to be trifled with. Your old friend is currently working as a coachman in the Lu residence. Later, I will use the identity of the Merak Palace to negotiate with them. As for whether it will work or not, I can't guarantee. Just do your best. Yi Fei nodded, but he felt strange in his heart. He felt that he had a conflict with the Nalan clan. He broke into the ice-snow valley of the Nalan clan and encountered a man who looked like a snow demon. As a result, God was even more unlucky. He directly entered the Nalan clan and became a coachman. Yi Fei knew that with God's identity and pride in the Earth realm, it was absolutely impossible for him to take the initiative to become someone else's coachman. There must be a secret behind this. At the same time, when Yi Fei walked into the aristocratic area, Nalan Yi, who was released, went directly to the gate of the Nalan clan with a strong anger. She took the initiative to introduce herself to the housekeeper who received her and said, "I am Nalan Yi, a branch of the 10,000 Sword City. I have important information to report to the clan." "Nalan Yi, which sword Dao genius from the Sword Palace? You came to the Imperial City with the people of the Sword Palace. I heard that there is a Xue Qianxiu in the Sword Palace. He has a lot of potential. What does he look like? Is he married?" Just when Nalan Yi was reporting, a luxurious carriage suddenly came out of the Nalan clan. It's just that the people pulling the carriage weren't strange beasts, but living people. These people were all sealed with seals on their necks, and their bodies were wrapped with reins. 10 sovereign realm cultivators were pulling the carriage with a blank face. They seemed to have lost all hope in life. They were like walking corpses. In the carriage, there was a proud girl sitting in it. The girl was quite beautiful, and her noble background made her look like a high and mighty princess, which added a bit of charm. Although Nalan Yi was much prettier than the girl, she still felt apprehensive when facing the girl. This was because Nalan Yi knew this girl. She was the young miss of the Nalan clan's direct line of descent. Not only did she have a high status, but she was also very talented. At such a young age, she had already broken through to the Dao Lord realm. She was highly valued by the clan. However, this girl had a strange hobby. She loved to collect beautiful men, and her style was very valiant. At this moment, the girl was asking about Xue Qianxiu. It was obvious that she had designs on Xue Qianxiu. As Xue Qianxiu's official girlfriend, even if she was hurt by Xue Qianxiu once, Nalan Yi still felt very uncomfortable. She purposely skipped this question, and a good idea appeared in her mind. "Miss Mayer, you've been in the Imperial City for a long time, so you don't know that the strongest person in the Sword Palace isn't Xue Qianxiu, but a commoner called Yi Fei. This person is extraordinarily handsome, and he's the most talented sword champion in the past 100 years of the Sword Palace. Moreover, the women by his side are all devastatingly beautiful. It's enviable. Nalan Yi's attitude was humble. Nalan Mayer was very interested in what she said. Yi Fei, is there such a person in the Sword Palace? I've played with countless beautiful men, but I've never played with a sword champion. This Yi Fei is not bad. As for devastatingly beautiful, I don't think so. In this world, when it comes to devastatingly beautiful, there's only Zhao Yu. When Zhao Yu is mentioned, Nalan Mayer clearly felt very uncomfortable. After all, beauties were natural enemies. Nalan Yi also caught on to this point. She purposely said, the woman by Yi Fei's side is called by Yanran. She's from the Lord Pan Palace in the city of Divine Kings. She's not as beautiful as Zhao Yu, but I heard that there's another woman in his family called Lu Qing. Perhaps she can compete with Zhao Yu. What? Lu Qing, that Yi Fei has an honest appearance. Does he make others think that he's someone easy to bully? Hearing those words, one of the coachmen who had a numb expression on his face finally couldn't help but ask. Because he was too agitated, he even accidentally pulled the carriage, causing the carriage to sway, almost causing Nalan Mayer, who was standing, to fall down from the carriage. Nalan Mayer was instantly enraged. Without even thinking, the whip in her hand whistled through the air and struck the heavenly god's back. Even though the heavenly god had an eternal divine body, his bloodline was suppressed, and his cultivation level was only that of a ruler. How could he withstand Nalan Mayer's furious Tao monarch attack? Chapter 24-29. Life is as cheap as grass. Unfortunately, the god of heaven was unable to commit suicide by cutting his own throat. This was because ever since he became a coachman for the Nalan family, his divine soul had been implanted with a soul worm restriction. This was to prevent these coachmen from suddenly escaping and damaging the Nalan family's reputation. Tian Shun had entered the heaven realm before Yi Fei. Originally, Tian Shun thought that as the earthly venerable of the divine temple and the leader of the Rinzhu impregnable pass, he would have a smooth journey into the heaven realm. Unfortunately, reality was cruel. When heavenly deities entered the heaven realm, they were the same as other people from the earth realm. Their cultivation was sealed by the heaven realm. They had to think of a way to break this seal step by step. For this reason, heavenly deities suffered a lot and suffered a lot. This was especially true for the heavenly god, who had been in a high position for too long. It was very difficult for him to lower himself to do something that seemed very lowly. Because of this, the heavenly god had delayed for a very long time before he managed to break the seal on his own and recover his cultivation. The heavenly deity was lucky. When he entered the heaven realm, he was teleported to a place near the Scarlet Moon Divine Dynasty. The Scarlet Moon Divine Dynasty wasn't very friendly to people from the Earth realm. There were even rumors that the Heaven Realm Seal was prepared by the Scarlet Moon Divine Dynasty and other forces to prevent people from the Earth Realm from rising. Therefore, the heavenly deity didn't dare to reveal that he was from the Earth Realm. In the end, after experiencing several downfalls, Kami finally put down his arrogance. He relied on his own intelligence and wisdom to join a certain rogue cultivator force near the Imperial City. Moreover, relying on his knowledge and experience as the leader of Rinzhu's impregnable pass, he quickly squeezed his way into the middle-level leader of this force. The only thing that Kami regretted was that it was too difficult for rogue cultivator forces to survive in the Heaven Realm. In order to compete for cultivation resources, the rogue cultivators also constantly fought among themselves. With the heavenly god's talent, they were not afraid of this kind of competition. On the contrary, the heavenly gods had chosen the right team repeatedly. Almost every time, they would win the favor of the victor. Their cultivation would also rise with the tide and continue to rise with each successful team. Just as the heavenly deity was filled with self-satisfaction, planning to break through to the Lord of Heaven and then think of a way to control this loose cultivator faction for his own use, a tragedy occurred. The leader of his loose cultivator faction unintentionally offended a warrior of the Nalan family. Even though this warrior was only the most unremarkable member of the Nayland family's hundreds of thousands of clansmen, he still didn't know what to do. But if a rogue cultivator faction were to offend an ancient clan like your Nayland family, the consequences could be imagined. That rogue cultivator faction's leader would be killed on the spot, his trusted subordinates all killed, and hundreds of rogue cultivators would either be killed or captured. These rogue cultivators that were captured wouldn't be immediately executed. Instead, they would become the Nayland family slaves. For example, the heavenly deity was implanted with a soul worm. Not only would he be unable to resist any of the Nayland family's orders, but he wouldn't even have the right to die. In the end, the heavenly deity was assigned to Nayland May-er, the most valiant woman in the ancient imperial city. Every day, he would pull a carriage and bring Nayland May-er around the ancient imperial city. He would make friends with all sorts of young geniuses and suffer all sorts of humiliation. The rogue cultivators that were captured along with the heavenly deity quickly became numb. Their willpower collapsed, and they became walking corpses that only knew how to pull carriages. However, the heavenly deity was different. He was the leader of the impregnable pass in Rinzu. He was an earthly venerate of the heavenly deity hall. Even though he had suffered all sorts of humiliation, the heavenly deity still endured it. He hoped that one day he would be able to escape from the Nayland family and regain his freedom. However, when Lanyi mentioned Yi Fei and Lu Qing, the impact on the heavenly deity was too great. Even though the heavenly deity had pretended to be numb, his heart was still in turmoil. He couldn't help but ask. The heavenly deity regretted it as soon as he asked this question. A pair of cold eyes were staring at him. The owner of these eyes was, of course, Nayland May-er. When she saw that the heavenly deity didn't kneel down and beg for forgiveness like the other servants of the Nayland family, Nayland May-er's lips curled into a disdainful sneer. I didn't expect that there would be such an unruly wild horse among my coachmen. Your disguise is very good. When you heard the names Yi Fei and Lu Qing, you became so agitated. It seems like you and Yi Fei must be in cahoots. Lanyi looked at the heavenly deity in surprise. She didn't expect that when she came to the Nayland family to complain and absolve herself of responsibility, she would actually meet an old friend of Yi Fei's. Moreover, this old friend was a down-and-out coachman. Nayland May-er didn't care so much. When she saw the heavenly deity's unyielding attitude, her face turned cold. She raised the whip in her hand subconsciously and was about to beat the silent heavenly deity to death. Lanyi's eyebrows twitched. She was a smart person. Although she didn't know Yi Fei for a long time, she could tell that Yi Fei was a genuine person. If he targeted Yi Fei himself, there wouldn't be any problems. However, if he targeted the people around Yi Fei, then it might really provoke Yi Fei's demonic nature. Lanyi wanted to take revenge on Yi Fei, but she didn't dare to really offend Yi Fei. She hurriedly took a step forward and persuaded Nayland May, Miss May-er, you can't kill this person. Although Yi Fei is a demon, he values friendship. Since this person is an old friend of his, if Miss May-er kills him, Yi Fei will inevitably hold a grudge against you. Why don't Miss May-er make use of this person and let Yi Fei take the initiative to look for you, then take the opportunity to make your request? Only then did Nayland May-er retract her whip. She smiled and nodded. You are right. Nayland May-er, have played with all kinds of men, but I have never played with this sword master. However, this person can be spared from death, but he can't escape punishment. Men, chop off the hand that shook the carriage just now. What? This vicious woman actually wants to chop off my hand. In the Earth realm, he was the high and mighty leader of the human race. In the Heaven realm, not only was he reduced to a coachman, he even had to have one of his hands chopped off. The intense humiliation finally caused the Sky God to be unable to endure it. He thought that the Nayland family's hand was truly chopped off, completely cutting off the life force of his arm. In the future, he wouldn't even be able to regrow his severed arm. How could the Sky God accept such humiliation? Stop. A warrior prefers death to humiliation. As the Nayland family's coachman, this Sky God has already suffered all kinds of humiliation. This sky god advises everyone, as a person, it's best to leave behind a thread of hope. Who knows? This sky god won't rise up in the future. Facing the greatest humiliation, the sky god finally stopped pretending. He regained the aura of a sky god from the earth realm, and also gave the Nalan family's warriors a formless pressure. This pressure caused many of them to involuntarily take a step back. The sky god would rather die than be humiliated. Chapter 2430. Ruthlessly destroying a flower. Break this person's arms? Lanyi's eyes widened. Suddenly, she realized that she had made a wrong decision. She shouldn't have used this method to take revenge on Yi Fei. If Yi Fei's arms were really broken and he became a cripple, Lanyi couldn't imagine how much anger she would have to endure from Yi Fei. She definitely wouldn't be able to endure this kind of anger. Miss Mayer, this isn't appropriate. Lanyi still wanted to persuade her, but the moment she said those words, a pair of cold eyes had already swept over her. If you say another word, this lady will also break your arm. Who do you think you are? My Nalan May is a branch of the Nalan family. Why do I, Nalan May need you to tell me what to do? Hurry up and attack. Boom. The god of heaven wasn't willing to be humiliated. After all, he was the leader of the human race's impregnable past. He also had his own pride and dignity. Thus, the god of heaven chose to resist. Eternal light bloomed from his body, and he actually broke free from the chains that bound him. He planned to break out of the encirclement. The Nalan family's warriors were all shocked. This coachman actually has a bloodline. This is something that we didn't know ever since we captured him. Not only the surrounding warriors, but also the rogue cultivators who were captured along with the god of heaven. Many of them widened their eyes. They had known the god of heaven for more than 10 years, but they didn't know that the god of heaven was a bloodline martial artist. No wonder this person is always able to have the last laugh in the internal strife. This person's thoughts are too meticulous. An old rogue cultivator side. A heavenly deity who had unleashed his bloodline was extremely powerful. With his sovereign cultivation, he was able to withstand the attacks of several heavenly monarchs. Furthermore, he had even unleashed the physical martial arts that only the Nalan clan possessed. The Nalan clan's martial artists were all shocked. Some of the martial artists even had the heart to appreciate the talent. They said in a low voice, Miss Mayer, this person's potential is not bad. It's a pity to cripple him. If we can make him work for the clan, if we take him in just because he has a little bit of potential, then our Nalan ancient clan is a beggar's nest. Moreover, this man has become a coachman and has secretly learned our clan's martial arts. He is so unruly. What's the point of keeping him? Just kill him. Nalan Mayer coldly humphed. Her personality was like that, high and mighty, bossy, and arrogant. Whatever she wanted, others had to comply. If they disobeyed, they would be beaten to death. In any case, the Nalan clan had never lacked slaves with potential. Furthermore, as there had never been an eternal divine body in the heavenly realm, Nalan did not know how powerful the bloodline of a heavenly god was. She merely relied on her cultivation as a Tao lord to directly crush him with her divine ability. The shadow of a whip transformed into an illusory wind dragon. It raised its head and roared, suppressing the heavenly god. At this moment, Yi Fei had just arrived at the entrance of the Nalan clan and coincidentally saw the dragon-shaped whip shadow. He could not help but be surprised. This Nalan clan is indeed an ancient clan. He can actually transform his shadow into a dragon. This divine ability is really exquisite. Xiao Chao also curiously opened his heavenly eye of the heavens and earth to take a peek. In the end, Xiao Chao's eyes widened. The dragon turtle, who was secretly eating the Xian stones, subconsciously raised its little wooden tablet. Heavenly God, eternal light. That is the light of the heavenly God's bloodline. With Yi Fei's eyesight, after seeing the whip shadow, he quickly saw the eternal light that was as weak as a candle flame under the whip shadow. The heavenly god was kneeling on the ground with one leg. He raised his long spear with both hands to block the wind dragon's attack. This long spear was formed by the heavenly god's bloodline power. It could be considered as a natural mystique that he had awakened on his own. It was extremely extraordinary. However, the difference in their cultivation levels was still too great. The heavenly god's eternal spear only lasted for a few breaths before it shattered. The gigantic claw of the wind dragon was already ruthlessly crushing the heavenly god's body. The heavenly god smiled bitterly and closed his eyes to await his death. Boom! At this moment, a sword light came from afar with rage. It transformed into a vast destructive aura and instantly annihilated the phantom of the wind dragon. Yi Fei wielded his sword and strode over from afar. He had finally taken the heavenly god's life. However, when he saw the heavenly god's tattered clothes and bloodied back, Yi Fei's heart exploded with rage. Stop! Whoever dares to hurt my big brother, don't blame my sword for being merciless. It's Yi Fei. Lanyi stood beside Nalan Mayer, her mouth agape in shock. Yi Fei had actually walked right into the trap. No, he had come to save the car driver. When she compared him to Shui Qianxiu, who had taken the initiative to push her out to defend against Yi Fei in order to win, Lanyi's heart was filled with mixed feelings. The heavenly god opened his eyes in shock. Yi Fei, it's really Yi. In his excitement, the heavenly god almost called out Yi Fei's title of human emperor. Seeing the heavenly god in such dire straits, Yi Fei also sighed. He didn't say anything and just strode over to help the heavenly god up. Big brother, I've wronged you. Third brother. The heavenly god's voice was choked with emotion. Back in Renzu's impregnable pass, Yi Fei, Ren Shun, and the heavenly god became sworn brothers. It was purely a farce, and the heavenly god didn't take it seriously. However, Yi Fei still remembered it, and even lent him a helping hand when he was at his lowest. How could the heavenly god not be moved? So you're Yi Fei, the new sword champion of the Sword Palace. Although you're not as good-looking as many people and your face is a little darker, you have a good temperament and are very suitable to be my playmate. Nalan Mei looked at Yi Fei with interest and even teased him. Bai Yanran blushed when he heard this. He felt that this woman was too bold and unrestrained. However, Yi Fei acted as if he didn't hear or see her. He treated this woman as if she didn't exist. Big brother heavenly god, you've been wronged. This isn't a good place to talk. Come, I'll take you to a good place. Yi Fei helped the heavenly god up and turned to leave. He even used a burst of profound energy to heal all of the heavenly god's injuries. The heavenly god looked at Yi Fei in shock. Nalan Mei, who was ignored, looked at him with anger. Yi Fei, where are you taking my coachman? Let go of him and then get over here and kneel at my feet. Nalan Mei did not like men, but rather, she liked to torture them. Yi Fei's disregard had infuriated her in an instant. Seeing that their miss was enraged, the warriors who had just retreated all roared in anger and swarmed over, wanting to capture Yi Fei. Get lost! A burst of sword light suddenly exploded from Yi Fei's body, turning the entire area into a sea of blood. The warriors who were close to him were injured by the sword aura before they could even understand what was going on. They vomited blood and retreated. At the same time, the sword aura didn't stop there. It continued to move forward and covered the entire area. Nalan Mei's expression changed drastically. She unleashed the aura of a Tao Lord and waved her whip in the air. Her whip caused a huge crack to appear in the void. However, within the crack, there was a burst of sword light that broke through the limit. It brought with it a boundless aura of death. The sword broke through the void and cut the whip in Nalan Mei's hand. In the end, the sword aura exploded in front of Nalan Mei. Not only did it pierce through Nalan Mei's chest, but also through Nalan Mei to the ground. She was covered in blood and looked very pathetic. Chapter 24:31. Dare not move. Yi Fei's movements were too fast. It was only when Nayland Mayer had fallen to the ground that those Nayland family warriors finally reacted. They roared in anger and quickly surrounded Yi Fei. "Oh no, someone kidnapped Miss May. Quick, quickly inform the elders of the clan. Who are you? How dare you behave so atrociously in my Nayland ancient clan?" Lan Yi stared blankly at Yi Fei. Originally, she only wanted to borrow the power of the Nayland family to take a small revenge on Yi Fei. She never thought that things would turn out like this. Yi Fei actually injured Nayland Mei at the doorstep of the Nayland family. The head of the intelligence hall, who was in charge of leading the way, almost fainted from fright. He hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Wu Jie. "Young master, this Yi Fei is simply a jinx. It said that wherever he goes, there will be people shouting and killing. Young master, it's best that you don't get too involved with this person. Shut up. What's wrong with the Nayland clan? If Brother Yi can beat them up, then I, Wu Jie, can't beat them up." Hearing this, not only did Wu Jie not distance himself from Yi Fei, he even exuded a fighting spirit, as if he was itching to fight. This almost scared the manager to death. But while the manager could hold Wu Jie back, he couldn't hold back Mad Dog. Seeing that Yi Fei was surrounded, Mad Dog rushed forward without a word and fought with these Nayland family warriors. Bai Yinran hesitated for a moment and suddenly stepped on the ground continuously. She actually danced with her sword, carving divine patterns, creating a strange screen of sword light that enveloped all the nearby martial artists. As a warmonger, Wu Jie immediately felt his blood boil. Without saying a word, he tossed aside the manager who was trying to dissuade him and charged forward. He single-handedly blocked half of the Tao monarchs present, causing the celestial god's heart to pound in fear. "I've had such a hard time in the celestial realm. I nearly lost all of my brilliance and died in an instant. Yet, Third Brother managed to make a name for himself in the celestial realm and even made so many powerful friends, the sky god felt a lump in his throat. He was depressed, but also grateful. The severely injured Nayland Mare was so angry that her delicate face was contorted. "Who are you people? How dare you commit murder in front of the Nayland clan? Lan Yi, what are you waiting for? I'm the young miss of the direct line of descent of the Nayland clan, and I'm 10,000 times more honorable than you. You bitch, how dare you stand aside and watch me being humiliated as a Tao Lord?" Yi Fei's sword didn't have any killing intent. So even though she was severely injured, Nayland Mare endured her injuries and tried to get up from the ground. At this moment, an even more terrifying sword aura erupted from Yi Fei's body. The black gold Emperor's sword, with a destructive sword light, came crashing down again. Yi Fei's sword happened to hit Nayland Mayer's body. Nayland Mayer's face turned ghastly pale. Not even in her wildest dreams would she have thought that Yi Fei would not know how to show mercy to the fairer sex. To think that he would even deal such a heavy blow to her. Even if she were a Tao Lord, she would not be able to withstand such a powerful sword strike. Her body, which had just stood up, was immediately slammed back down. Her knees were on the ground, and she was facing the sky god. Obviously, Yi Fei had done this on purpose. The sky god's expression couldn't help but become even more complicated. Who would have thought that this arrogant and domineering young miss of the direct line of descent would one day kneel in front of him, a coachman? The kneeling Nayland Mayer was so angry that she screamed, "Yi Fei, how dare you treat me like this? You know that I'm the young miss of the direct line of descent of the Nayland clan. Insulting me is equivalent to insulting the entire Nayland clan." Seeing that this girl was still unrepentant, Yi Fei finally couldn't hold himself back any longer. A terrifying killing intent exploded out from his body as the black gold Emperor's sword was suddenly placed on Nayland Mayer's neck. The cold and sharp feeling of the sword's edge instantly caused the screaming Nayland Mayer to be filled with fear and shock. "Apologize or die. I'm the young miss of the direct line of descent of the Nayland clan. My father is a divine emperor. How dare you kill me?" Nayland Mayer's eyes were filled with hatred. She had been pampered and spoiled since she was young, so she definitely couldn't lower her head to a commoner like Yi Fei. I can apologize to you, but I can't apologize to this lowly coachman. The sky god's expression changed. Third brother, why don't we just forget about it? The Nalan clan isn't an ordinary power. Apologize. Yi Fei suddenly shouted coldly. At this moment, the black gold emperor's sword exploded with a destructive sword light. If you don't apologize, I'll cut off both your arms right here and now. Chi. Yi Fei did as he said. The sharp blade directly slashed at one of Nalan Mei-er's arms. Nalan Mei-er finally screamed in fear. She had always been vain. If her arms were cut off, it would definitely be a fate worse than death. Don't hurt me. I apologize. I'm sorry. In the face of the threat of losing her arms, Nalan Mei-er finally chose to put down her pride. When she apologized, she was so angry that she spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. The sky god's gaze became even more complicated. Third brother, many thanks. The sky god cupped his hands. At this moment, he was no longer the coachman of the Nalan clan. He was the real sky god, one of the two leaders of the human clan's impregnable pass. No need to thank me. Yi Fei kept his sword. He didn't even look at Nalan Mei-er, who was on the ground. He just supported the sky god and turned to leave. Wu Jie, Mad Dog, and Bai Yanran also returned one after another, advancing and retreating together. The warriors of the Nalan clan paced back and forth. They didn't know if they should use all their strength to stop Yi Fei from leaving, or to save Nalan Mei-er, who was kneeling on the ground. At this moment, a cold snort filled with killing intent suddenly came from within the Nalan clan. Humph. Do you think you can just walk away after humiliating a direct descendant of the Nalan clan? Boom! A powerful monarch god's aura came down from the sky. Many of the Lord of Heaven and Tao lords couldn't withstand the pressure and knelt on the ground. Nalan Mei-er also recovered from her daze. She looked at Yi Fei with eyes full of hatred and shouted, "Ninth uncle, help me kill them. They humiliated me and the Nalan clan." Humiliated? I don't think so. You were the one who humiliated us first. We were only forced to defend ourselves and counterattack. Wu Jie was a little humorous. The person behind him was complaining incessantly. The monarch god who walked out also looked at Wu Jie. But after seeing Wu Jie's clothes, his eyes narrowed. You are from the Merak Palace. What is your name? Wu Jie greets Martial Uncle. Wu Jie bowed politely. The monarch god who walked out had a serious expression. He nodded slightly and said, You are Wu Yong, the son of Renzu? Merak Palace and my clan have always been on good terms. You can leave now. I won't make things difficult for you. That won't do. These people are either my martial brothers or my friends. If they don't leave, I can't leave either. My father said that the first thing to do in the Jianghu is to be loyal. Wu Jie winked at Yi Fei and said seriously. What he meant was that he was using his father's identity and the identity of the Merak Palace to protect Yi Fei. Chapter 24:32. The coachman flipped over. You think we wouldn't dare touch a hair on your head if you just stood there? The juniors nowadays are already so arrogant that they can treat my Nalan clan as nothing? The divine lord of the Nalan family suddenly laughed. He had a secret technique that could cut off sound waves. When they heard Yi Fei's voice transmission to Wu Jie, Bai Yanran and Mad Dog's expressions changed. After all, this was a divine lord in front of them. He was invincible below Renzu. Even though this divine lord didn't immediately attack out of fear of Wu Jie's status, the divine lord's aura alone was enough to crush ordinary Tao lords to the point where they found it hard to breathe. The heavenly gods, who were merely sovereigns, were almost forced to their knees by this pressure. At this moment, an intense, withering sword light enveloped the area. This was the light of the withering sword, which could destroy mystiques. Strictly speaking, the might of a divine lord was an instinctive mystique. Yi Fei could use the withering sword to disperse it to a certain extent. The divine lord who came out was shocked. You use a sword and have condensed a sword soul. Who are you in the Sword Palace? Replying, Blue Demon Emperor. This young master, Yi was once the sword champion of the Sword Palace. However, he caused too much trouble and has been chased out of the Sword Palace by Runzu of the Inner and Outer Sword Palace. This time, it was Lanyi who answered. She hadn't been able to save Nayland Mayer, so she naturally had to make up for it. Sword Champion? This title also shocked Blue Demon Emperor. No wonder Wu Jie was so protective of this kid. Clearly, Blue Demon Emperor had misunderstood and thought that Wu Jie had appeared to recruit Yi Fei into the Merak Palace. Immediately, an even more terrifying Divine Lord aura was released, shattering Yi Fei's solitary sword light. I don't care who you are or what your relationship with Wu Jie is. Since you dare to behave so atrociously in the Nayland family, don't even think about taking half a step out of here alive. Ninth uncle, kill him. I want to see him torn into pieces with my own eyes. Nayland Mayer's tone was incomparably venomous. Ever since she was young, she had always been the pearl of the Nayland family. When had she ever been like this? Heavily injured by Yi Fei, humiliated to the point where she had to kneel on the ground and apologize to a lowly coachman? What kind of humiliation was this? Hearing Nayland Mayer's words, the Blue Demon Immortal Lord nodded slightly. A terrifying mystique had already shaken the heavens and turned into a gust of wind that was about to kill Yi Fei instantly. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog's expressions turned tense as they looked at Wu Jie at the same time. Don't worry about it, Brother Yi, Wu Jie said, his eyes narrowing. If you say there won't be any problems, then there won't be any problems. I'm also curious to see how Brother Yi will deal with the current situation. That was the life-saving token that his father, Wu Yongrenzu, gave him. Once used, he could summon Renzu's projection. Kill me? Nayland Mayer, do you know why I'm treating you this way? Why would I go against the entire Nayland family for a coachman? Do you know what kind of status the coachman you've taken as your slave has? Faced with the Immortal Lord's murderous intent, Yi Fei's words were firm. Instead of retreating, he advanced towards Nayland Mayer and the Blue Demon Immortal Lord. Nayland Mayer's expression was disdainful and her tone was cold. He's just a coachman. Even if he has some talent, in my eyes, he's not even comparable to a dog. You? The Sky God's face flushed red. When had he ever suffered such humiliation in the underworld? The Blue Demon Immortal Lord's expression was a little hesitant. This Immortal Lord could clearly sense that something was amiss. After all, given the strength of the Nayland family, if there were no special circumstances, Yi Fei would not take such a huge risk to offend the ancient family. I'll give you 10 breaths to tell me who this person is. The murderous intent that filled the sky suddenly froze. The Blue Demon Immortal Lord temporarily stopped his attacks. However, he only had 10 breaths. If Yi Fei could not give a satisfactory answer during this time, he would completely enrage the Immortal Lord. In fact, he might even enrage the entire Nayland family. In the void, not far away, there was already more than one Immortal Lord's divine consciousness sweeping out from the family. Each of these divine consciousnesses carried a strong, murderous intent. The prestige of the Nayland family was not to be violated. The Sky God, standing behind Yi Fei, became even more nervous. He could not help but grumble in disappointment. Third brother, I admit that I've offended you in the past. However, you don't have to be so sarcastic to me. Now, I'm just a lowly coachman. I'm not like you, causing trouble everywhere. To think that you haven't been beaten to death. The Sky God felt dejected as he thought about his own misfortune and looked at Yi Fei's glory. Yi Fei laughed and suddenly pushed the Sky God forward. He also pushed the Sky God towards the Blue Demon Immortal Lord and all the divine consciousnesses that were secretly watching. Big Brother Sky God, you don't have to belittle yourself. That's right. Although you haven't done as well as I have, and your cultivation level isn't as high as mine, you have forgotten that you have a good daughter. As the saying goes, a father's status depends on his daughter. Even if you spit at this Immortal Lord, I can guarantee that he won't dare to touch you. The Sky God snorted when he heard this. One of the Nayland family's divine consciousnesses could not help but ask coldly, is this person's daughter? Senior, please no. Big Brother Sky God's daughter is called Zhao Yu. She is currently in the Divine King Palace, cultivating with Qiuyun Rinzhu. Yifei smiled and cupped his hands towards the void. His words shocked all the divine consciousnesses in the void. Naylan Mei could not help but shriek. That's impossible. He's just a coachman with a life as cheap as grass. How could he be Zhao Yu's father? Naylan Mei, it was not the only one who could not believe it. Even Wu Jie was dumbfounded. He felt that Yifei was too good at bragging. It's over. Will Yifei be beaten to death for bragging like this? Bai Yanran was very sad and regretful. He should have reminded Yifei not to brag. Great. Now he had bragged all the way to the stars. The blue demon Immortal Lord laughed loudly. Junior, you actually want to use such a lie to get away with it? Do you really think that we Immortal Lords are fools? Die. Without giving Yifei a chance to speak, the blue demon Immortal Lord was completely enraged. He struck out with his palm, wanted to kill Yifei instantly. Yifei was not afraid at all. He stood as still as a mountain, not even bothering to use his dark force. Kill me if you dare. I don't care. But if you kill Big Brother Sky God and Zhao Yu finds out, I'll see if the Divine King Palace will treat your Naylan family as an enemy. As the saying went, the hatred of one's father was irreconcilable. Yifei's words and Yifei's calmness finally caused a divine consciousness in the void to ripple. A hurricane suddenly blocked the furious blue demon Immortal Lord. At the same time, he looked at Yifei. You say that he is Zhao Yu's father. Do you have any proof? Chapter 2433. Seeing my beautiful woman again by Yanran, and Mad Dog did the same. Faced with the murderous intent of the Divine Lords, they chose to stand side by side with Yifei. Their calmness in the face of death and their determination to stand up for their friends made many Divine Lords of the Naylan family secretly admire them. They also secretly feared them. After all, Wu Jie's status was extraordinary. Yifei's words shocked many of the Divine Lords. If what Yifei said was true, then Naylan clan would not only become enemies with Jade Palace, but also with Divine King Palace. Especially recently, there were rumors that Qiuyun Rinzhu wanted to matchmake Zhao Yu and Feng Yun, or one of the princes of Crimson Moon Divine Dynasty. Blue Devil, stand down. Immediately send someone to invite Qiuyun Rinzhu and Zhao Yu from the Palace of the Deity. A loud voice suddenly echoed from within the Naylan family. That voice contained the might of Rinzhu as it swept its gaze over the sky celestial. It was also this gaze that shocked the Naylan family's Rinzhu. A grade, 8 bloodline, and an eternal divine body. You actually became a slave in my Naylan clan. Why didn't anyone report this matter? Boom. Everyone could feel the human ancestors' anger. Using an eternal divine body with an 8th grade bloodline as a coachman, if this was spread out, it would only make people laugh and laugh at the Naylan family for not recognizing a talent. Naylan Mei's eyes widened in shock. Even if she was beaten to death, she would never have thought that the lowly commoner who had once pulled her carriage for so many years would actually possess an 8th grade bloodline. This bloodline was even higher than hers, the young miss of the direct line of descent. This can't be true. This must be fake. Yifei is just trying to stall for time. That lowly coachman, he definitely can't be related to Zhao Yu. Naylan Mei continuously comforted herself with these words. Wu Jie, however, laughed heartily. Haha, I knew it. Following Brother Yi, there's always something to see. The lowly coachman in the past is actually Zhao Yu's father, and he even possesses an 8th grade bloodline. Interesting, this is really interesting. Wu Jie laughed heartily. The thing he loved the most was to stir up trouble. The thing he loved to do the most was to stir up trouble. The reason he felt like old friends with Yifei at first sight was because he had taken a fancy to Yifei's talent. Even more so, he had taken a fancy to Yifei's ability to cause trouble wherever he went. Of course, Yifei couldn't feel happy about Wu Jie's admiration. Naylan clan, God, and Wang Bai, demon. Naylan heaven's God. Translation is Naylan World War. Naylan Mei's translation by God. And by Naylan translation, by God, 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 by translation, God, by God, God. Nalan fanatic war. The god of heaven smiled bitterly. All these years, I've been wandering around the divine prefecture, but I haven't heard anything about them. Do you still remember which god, Qiu Huang? Once, I saw with my own eyes that she was captured in a power struggle. Then, she was humiliated and angrily committed suicide. Before she died, she told me that she regretted it and that she really wanted to go home. The god of heaven's tone was gloomy. Hearing about which god Qiu Huang's experience, Yi Fei also sighed. He couldn't help but look in the direction of the imperial city. In that direction, there was also a beautiful woman with a veil covering her face. Her gaze also subconsciously looked in his direction. Even though they were separated by an infinite distance, their gazes met, but neither of them noticed. Uncle Zhao, are you still thinking about Yi Fei? Forgive me for saying too much, but it's basically impossible between you two. Ziyu stood behind Zhao Yu and sighed secretly. She was the daughter of a monarch god elder and had a bright future. Unfortunately, she was deceived by Du Chong and made a mistake. As a result, she was punished by Rinzhu and became Zhao Yu's servant. Fortunately, Zhao Yu didn't blame her. Seeing that she had taken the initiative to admit her mistake, she usually tried her best to take care of her. Over time, Ziyu felt at ease and stayed by Zhao Yu's side. However, Ziyu was still very pessimistic about the relationship between Zhao Yu and Yi Fei. Zhao Yu didn't explain. She just looked at the sky with a smile. No one could tell what this beautiful woman was thinking. Below the loft, Du Chong also looked at Zhao Yu's beautiful voice with jealousy. He had once wanted to pursue Zhao Yu, but after using an evil technique and becoming a eunuch, Du Chong gave up on this idea. Now, he looked up to Zhao Yu every day. It wasn't out of love, but when he looked at Zhao Yu, he would think of Yi Fei. When he thought of Yi Fei, infinite hatred and killing intent would arise in his heart. Zhao Yu also quickly felt Du Chong's gaze. Her eyes couldn't help but narrow. Then, she felt a powerful message coming quickly. A beautiful middle-aged woman in a palace dress appeared in the loft. Greetings, Qiu Yunrenzu. Ziyu quickly bowed. Master, why are you here? Zhao Yu was also a little surprised. Qiu Yunrenzu said unhappily, It's all because of you. You're now famous in the imperial city. Naturally, there will be a lot of trouble. Recently, someone from the Nalan family said that they found a coachman in their family. It's your father. They asked us to go and confirm it. Don't you think it's funny? But don't worry. I have already ordered people to beat the person who reported the news. No, master, don't blame them. I want to go and take a look. Zhao Yu's eyelids twitched. Just like Yi Fei, after entering the heaven realm, she kept asking about the whereabouts of the others. However, she didn't find anything. Now that she suddenly heard that the Nalan family seemed to have some clues, how could Zhao Yu hold back? She immediately made a request to Qiu Yunrenzu. With Qiu Yunrenzu's love for Zhao Yu, he naturally agreed to all of her requests. He grabbed Zhao Yu and Ziyu and directly used Rinzu's great divine ability to disappear from the loft and quickly teleported to the Nalan family. Even so, Qiu Yunrenzu spent a full 2 hours to arrive at the aristocratic district where the Nalan family was located. This showed how big the imperial city of the Crimson Moon Divine Dynasty was. At this time, just as Yi Fei healed Cammy's injuries, Xiao Chao's surprised voice suddenly came from the beastmark space. Yi Fei's body suddenly stiffened. He didn't need to turn around to know who had come. Zhao Yu, who had rushed over, instantly fixed her eyes on Yi Fei. Even though Yi Fei's back was facing her, that familiar aura and that familiar figure still made Zhao Yu's heart tremble. 2 lines of clear tears flowed down her beautiful eyes. It's him. It's really him. He's here. Is this coachman really your father? Qiu Yunrenzu didn't know Yi Fei. He naturally thought that Zhao Yu was crying because of the coachman beside Yi Fei. After taking a deep breath, Yi Fei suddenly turned around. A bright smile appeared on his face as he looked at Zhao Yu and Qiu Yunrenzu. Greetings, Qiu Yunrenzu. You're right, this person is Zhao Yu's father. Yi Fei helped Cammy up and was very polite. Seeing Yi Fei, Qiu Yunrenzu's eyes also lit up. You're so polite, even though you have a ninth grade bloodline. Although your appearance is a little lacking, this kind of temperament can only be possessed by geniuses. You're Wu Jie. I met your father a few times. Chapter 2434. Raised the palace of the king of gods. Wu Jie was depressed and took the initiative to say, I am Wu Jie. Greetings to Qiu Yunrenzu. Qiu Yunrenzu was surprised. If you are Wu Jie, then who is this person? It was no wonder that Qiu Yunrenzu had misunderstood. Yi Fei's aura was outstanding when he stood next to Wu Jie. His bloodline was also stronger than Wu Jie's. That was why Qiu Yunrenzu had mistaken him for someone else. Hearing Renzu's praise for Yi Fei, Nailan Mei was furious. She pointed at Yi Fei and said in a venomous tone, Qiu Yunrenzu, he is not Wu Jie. He is Yi Fei. Not only did he cause trouble in our Nailan family, he even said that the coachman who pulled my carriage was Zhao Yu's father. This is not only an insult to your disciple, it is an insult to the entire palace of the king of gods. Renzu, please punish me and kill this maniac. At this moment, Nailan Mei was no longer in the mood to flirt with Yi Fei. Right now, she couldn't wait for Yi Fei to die. His words shocked Qiu Yunrenzu. His eyes, which were filled with admiration, suddenly turned cold and vicious. You are Yi Fei, the scourge from Qingzhou. A scourge? Senior, do you have any misunderstandings about me? As everyone knows, I'm actually an honest person. Yi Fei felt depressed and had to repeat himself. But when they heard this, not only did the Nailan family Sir Gods have strange expressions, even Wu Jie couldn't help but admire him. He secretly praised in his heart. No wonder Brother Yi is still alive even after causing trouble everywhere. Just his ability to boast is enough to make me feel inferior. Oh my God, he is actually smiling. In front of Renzu, even Sir Gods would stand solemnly, but Yi Fei was actually very calm. He even revealed a simple smile that was unique to honest people. This smile was very infectious. If one didn't know Yi Fei's identity, Qiu Yunrenzu would also be affected. But this time, when Qiu Yunrenzu saw this smile, he felt as if he had swallowed a fly. His body immediately emitted Renzu's aura, as if he couldn't wait to kill Yi Fei on the spot. Yi Fei's face was dark. He had saved Cammy out of kindness and finally found a chance to meet Zhao Yu. In the end, Qiu Yunrenzu was even more despicable than Zhao's Empress Dowager. He obviously wanted to kill him. Helpless, Yi Fei could only give the heavenly deity a look. With Cammy's deep foresight, he naturally understood Yi Fei's meaning. Before Qiu Yunrenzu could really do anything, Cammy had already walked forward and clasped his hands at Qiu Yunrenzu. Thank you, Renzu, for taking care of my daughter. Seeing that you are fine and that you can become Renzu's disciple, I have no more regrets. Qiu Yunrenzu's expression became uncertain. He looked at Yi Fei, then at Zhao Yu. Is he really your father? Master, he is indeed half a father to me. Zhao Yu did not deny it. After all, if Cammy's daughter had not reincarnated, Zhao Yu would not be who he was today. However, the main reason that made Zhao Yu acknowledge Cammy was Yi Fei. When Zhao Yu spoke, his gaze was always on Yi Fei, causing Cammy to be depressed. Qiu Yunrenzu was so angry that his sleeves fluttered. He forcefully suppressed the urge to beat Yi Fei to death. After all, Zhao Yu had already acknowledged Cammy's identity, and Yi Fei was the one who saved Cammy. If Qiu Yunrenzu attacked Yi Fei now, not only would he not have an excuse, he would also be labeled as someone who repaid kindness with ingratitude. Of course, the one with the ugliest expression wasn't Qiu Yunrenzu, but Nailan Mei. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that the lowly coachman who pulled her carriage was actually Zhao Yu's father. She shook her head vigorously, unable to accept this fact. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. How could that coachman be Zhao Yu's father? I know. It's the two of you who colluded to harm me. Men, quickly arrest him. Arrest that coachman and Yi Fei. Unfortunately, no one obeyed Nailan Mei's orders. Many of the Nalan family's monarchs shook their heads and looked at Nalan Mayer with disappointment. Nalan Mayer was talented, but her temperament was too weak. Moreover, how could she just casually acknowledge someone as her father? Since Zhao Yu had confirmed it, it proved that the former coachman was indeed Zhao Yu's father. Even if it was only half of him, the Nalan family would not be able to capture him. Even the Nalan family's monarchs had to immediately apologize to the God of Heaven. After all, the God of Heaven was captured by the Nalan family and worked as a coachman for many years. If this grudge was not resolved, the Nalan family would not only make Zhao Yu hostile, it would also make Qiyun Renzu angry. Qiyun Renzu, this matter is our Nalan family's fault. We are willing to compensate you. How are you going to compensate me? After so many years, you captured me and ordered me around as a coachman. Is there any greater humiliation in the world than this? The God of Heaven was filled with resentment. He thought about how even a person abandoned by the heavens like Yi Fei could survive in the heavenly realm. In the end, he, a God of Heaven, became a miserable coachman in the heavenly realm. Just thinking about it made the God of Heaven so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. The Nalan family's monarchs were all very embarrassed. Many of them glared at Nalan Mayer with extreme dissatisfaction. This matter is all because of Nalan Mayer. I suggest that we compensate Nalan Mayer with 10 years of cultivation resources. What do you all think? 10 years of cultivation resources. That's 1,000,000 Xian veins. Qiyun Renzu, this is already the biggest concession our Nalan family can make. Another monarch stood out and said with a very determined tone. Qiyun Renzu was also slightly moved. 1,000,000 Xian veins is not a small number. It seems that the Nalan family is very sincere. How about we resolve the grudge between your father and us? Knowing that Qiyun Renzu had made up his mind, Zhao Yu sighed and nodded. If Master agrees to 2 conditions, I will listen to Master and resolve the grudge between us and the Nalan family. What conditions? Qiyun Renzu asked. First, my father was saved by Yi Fei. I hope that the Nalan family can also resolve the grudge between you and Yi Fei and not take revenge on Yi Fei. Zhao Yu said in a deep voice. He did not look at Yi Fei, but Yi Fei could feel an invisible warmth flowing in his heart. Zhao Yu did not forget about him. All right, we will not pursue the matter today, but if you provoke the Nalan family again in the future, you will be killed without mercy. In order to not become enemies with the Divine King Palace and Qiyun Renzu, the Nalan family was the first to respond. No matter how unwilling Qiyun Renzu was, he could only endure it. What is the second condition? Zhao Yu smiled and looked at Qiyun Renzu without looking at Yi Fei. Second, I hope that Master can give the 1,000,000 Xian veins of the Nalan family to Yi Fei. After all, he was the one who saved my father. It is reasonable for us to compensate him. If Master can agree to these 2 conditions, I will listen to Master in the future. After saying that, Zhao Yu swayed his long skirt and was about to kneel down in front of Qiyun Renzu. Qiyun Renzu let out a long sigh and suppressed the urge to slap Yi Fei to death. He forced a smile and said, All right, Master will listen to you. I hope that you will remember what you said today. Nalan family, you can compensate this kid with your Xian veins. Let's go. Now, Ancestor Qiuyan had reached the point where he would feel annoyed just by looking at Yi Fei. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. He didn't give Zhao Yu and Yi Fei a chance to speak. He took Zhao Yu, Ziyue, and Sky God with him and used Ancestor Ren's teleportation ability to quickly leave. Yi Fei was extremely depressed. In the Earth realm, the person I hate the most is Zhao's Empress Dowager. In the Heaven realm, the person I hate the most is Qiyun Renzu. One day, I will destroy the Divine King Palace. Even Renzu will not be able to stop me. Chapter 2435. In Tianjin, although Ancestor Qiuyan had left, Yi Fei wouldn't be polite with the Nalan family's profound vein compensation. He accepted it on the spot. A total of 1,000,000 Xian veins. Including his own Xian veins, Yi Fei now had close to 2 million Xian veins. With so many Xian veins, Yi Fei no longer had to worry about breaking through to the Tao Lord realm. On the day he received these Xian veins, he decided to return to the inn in the Merak Palace and cultivate wholeheartedly. While consolidating his complete cultivation of the Lord of Heaven, he began trying to cultivate the Tao Lord Scroll's golden body of despair. Once he cultivated this golden body, ordinary Tao Lord divine abilities would not be able to hurt him. Mad Dog and Wu Jie were also cultivating in seclusion. The Earth Carnage leaderboard competition was of great importance. It was a grand event for all young martial artists to compete. No one would be careless at this time. Only Bai Yanran did not cultivate. She even rejected Yi Fei's offer of 1,000,000 Xian veins. Bai Yanran's reason was simple. She was from the Lord Pan Palace after all. Her father, Bai Sui Feng, had already prepared enough cultivation resources for her to break through to the Tao Lord realm. A few days later, Bai Yanran forcefully dragged Yi Fei and Mad Dog to the city gate to welcome the arrival of the Lord Pan Palace's flying ship. Yi Fei and Mad Dog were depressed about this, but they had no choice but to obey. Yi Fei found an empty space in a corner of the city gate and continued to cultivate. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog were dumbfounded. The martial artist passing by also looked sideways. Who is this person? He's cultivating anywhere and anytime. Is he a martial arts fanatic like Jean Foam? Someone secretly discussed. Hearing these discussions, a mocking voice suddenly came from the crowd. Jean Foam? He's just a loose cultivator. How can he compare to Jean Foam? He's just putting on an act. The one who spoke was an arrogant disciple of the Yin Yang Palace. Yi Fei had killed Yang Ming and Yang Hao consecutively, which had infuriated the Yin Yang Palace. However, Yi Fei had gone to the Sword Palace after leaving the city of divine monarchs, leaving the Yin Yang Palace with no way to take revenge. Furthermore, Rizu was in charge of Qing Prefecture, making it difficult for the Yin Yang Palace to enter. It wasn't until Yi Fei rushed to the Imperial City and left the Jade Palace and that the Yin Yang Palace disciple in charge of surveillance found an opportunity. Soon, a large group of Yin Yang Palace disciples emerged from the hidden crowd and quickly surrounded Yi Fei. It's no wonder that guy is training at the city gate for no reason. He's adjusting his condition. Bai Yanran and Mad Dog looked at Yi Fei strangely. However, Yi Fei's face was calm. He didn't even look at the threat of the Yin Yang Palace disciples and continued to cultivate. With Xiao Chao's divine eye of heaven and earth, Yi Fei wasn't afraid that someone would dare to sneak up on him. This also made the surrounding Yin Yang Palace disciples somewhat at a loss. They all subconsciously looked in a certain direction. They saw that a palanquin had appeared out of nowhere in that direction. There were two beautiful maids standing beside it. It was very eye-catching and made people involuntarily curious about the identity of the person in the palanquin. This scene also attracted the attention of many people passing by. Some people even recognized the origin of the palanquin at a glance and couldn't help but exclaim, "That's the Yin Yang palanquin of the Yin Yang Palace." There's only one person who can ride this palanquin, and that's Yin Tianjin, who's ranked in the top 10 of the Earth Carnage ranking. Boom! The Yin Yang palanquin was directly carried in front of Yi Fei. Suddenly, the curtain was lifted, revealing the true appearance of the inside. The inside of the palanquin was actually a complete Tao monarch world. At this moment, a young man emitting a terrifying cold light walked out of the palanquin. His cold eyes suddenly exploded with divine light as he coldly glanced at Yi Fei. "You're Yi Fei, the survivor of the Heavenly Palace of Despair who killed Yang Ming and Yang Hao. I'm Yi Fei, but I don't belong to the Heavenly Palace of Despair. Lord Pan's Palace, Divine King Palace, Sword Palace, Merak Palace, and even your Yin Yang Palace have already acknowledged this point." Yi Fei's eyes turned cold. This Yin Tianjin pointed out his identity as a survivor of the Heavenly Palace of Despair as soon as he appeared. Clearly, he was up to no good. After all, this was the capital of the Crimson Moon Divine Dynasty, and the Heavenly Palace of Despair was destroyed. Wasn't it because they offended the Crimson Moon Divine Dynasty? After walking out of the Yin Yang palanquin, Yin Tianjin's eyes turned even colder. He looked indifferently in front of him and said, Yang Ming and Yang Hao can't die in vain. Since the Yangs can't kill you, then I'll take your life from the netherworld. Watch the Yin Yang palanquin in my palanquin. As he spoke, Yin Tianjin waved his hand, and the Yin Yang palanquin behind him moved with him. The palanquin's range kept expanding, and it could even swallow space. A few cultivators who were too close to the palanquin were caught off guard and were sucked into the space inside the palanquin. In an instant, their flesh and blood melted, and they were reduced to white bones. This also scared the nearby cultivators. Their faces changed drastically as they retreated in fear. Everyone, be careful. The Yin Yang Palace can communicate with the world of death. Once you fall into it, even a divine monarch might turn into a skeleton. Communicate with the world of death. Yi Fei also looked at the special world formed by the Yin Yang palanquin in shock. Only now did he know that the Yin Yang Palace wasn't able to destroy the heavenly palace of despair for no reason. Just this ability to communicate with the world was enough to make people tremble in fear. However, no matter how strong a mystique was, there would always be a flaw. The solitary sword was specially made to shatter such a flaw. Yi Fei touched his belt, and the black gold emperor's sword slashed forward with the wrath of an emperor. Between heaven and earth, a boundless solitary light appeared. This light filled the sky and blocked the Yin Yang palanquin's world of death. At this moment, Yin Tianjin's eyes emitted a terrifying cold light. At the same time, a strange ghostly face that seemed to be crying and laughing appeared behind him. This was Yin Tianjin's mystique intent, the Yin Yang ghostly face. It was also the Yin Yang Palace's most famous mystique. When the ghostly face appeared, it only needed to open its ghostly eyes to make the entire world cease to exist. Yi Fei's soul even felt like it had fallen from the mortal world to hell in an instant. Terrifying ghostly faces were everywhere. Two of the ghostly faces suddenly twisted and transformed into the faces of Yang Ming and Yang Hao. Yi Fei, give me back my life. Yang Ming roared. His face, which had died with his eyes wide open, was filled with deep hatred. At the same time, he spat out a twisted bloody arm from his mouth and frantically tried to wrap around Yi Fei. Scram! Yi Fei's expression was grim. The undying sword soul in his body suddenly burned like a raging inferno. He didn't know what kind of mystique this was, but he knew that if he didn't break this mystique as soon as possible, it would be extremely disadvantageous for him. Therefore, Yi Fei suddenly activated his strongest sword Dao, the Undying Emperor's Sword. Chapter 2436. Yin and Yang of the Dead-A powerful force made Yi Fei feel as if he had fallen into a strange spacetime. This spacetime was filled with Yin and Yang Qi. The Yang Qi was like the sun, burning his flesh and blood. The Yin Qi was like frost, freezing his soul. Everything was white as far as the eye could see. The ground was covered with bones and the sky was covered with ghost clouds. Ghost mountains rose from the ground, and Yin Tianjin stood proudly on top of one of the ghost mountains, looking down at Yi Fei coldly like the son of hell. Yin Yang palanquin, bury the living soul. Yi Fei, you have killed Yang Ming and Yang Hao. You have been in the limelight for a while, but you will still die under my Yin Yang palanquin in the end. What? I was actually pulled into the Yin Yang palanquin? Yi Fei felt his blood run cold. The Yin Yang Palace's martial arts were too strange. The Yang clan's martial arts were still all right. At least they were considered normal. However, the Yin clan's martial arts were mysterious and unpredictable. Even he had fallen for it. Unable to sense Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle's aura, Yi Fei decided to release his divine perception and scan the sky. In the end, his divine perception even broke through the sky and saw the scene outside. A huge yin-yang ghost mask swallowed him and Yin Tianjin at the same time, forming a special yin-yang space. Outside the space, Bai Yinran and Mad Dog were trying to attack the yin-yang ghost mask, but the yin-yang palace was too prepared this time. Not only did Yin Tianjin bring the yin-yang palanquin, a powerful weapon, but he also brought many disciples of the Yin-Yang Palace as his protectors. At this moment, these disciples of the Yin-Yang Palace rushed forward and tried their best to keep Yanran and the mad dog out of the ghost face. Do you see that, Yi Fei? I've used the Yin-Yang Palanquin to pull your true body into the death realm. In this death realm, I'm a god. I can turn you into ashes with a single thought. However, if you're willing to give me the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, I can consider sparing your two friends' lives, Yin Tianjin said coldly. He had spent so much effort to avenge Yang Ming and Yang Hao, but that was only secondary. His true objective was still the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. After all, Yin Tianjin cultivated the Yin-Yang Ghost Way. The Ghost Emperor Cauldron meant a lot to him. As he spoke, he even controlled the power of the entire death realm, turning it into streaks of black death aura that fiercely crushed towards Yi Fei. Yi Fei's expression couldn't help but become solemn. Yin Tianjin was a young Dao Lord ranked in the top 10 of the Earth Carnage roll. He even had the strange Yin-Yang Palanquin that trapped him. But how could he admit defeat just like that? He still wanted to take Zhao Yu away. He still wanted to flatten the Divine King's palace. He still had to strive to seize first place on the Earth Carnage Proclamation and do his best to search for the whereabouts of Wang Bai and the Devil Emperor. There were still too many things waiting for him to do. How could he be defeated here? You're not the first one who wants the Ghost Emperor Cauldron, and you won't be the last. Sword Soul burned on Yi Fei's body. The undying Emperor's sword suddenly shone brightly like a river of stars, tearing the sky and the Death Realm's void apart. Ghost mountains suddenly rose from the ground. They weren't real ghost mountains, but terrifying ghost hands that were formed by Yin-Yang Qi. They grabbed down and clashed with Yi Fei's sword light. Although the ghost hands were constantly destroyed by the sword light, the surrounding ghost mountains seemed endless. With a thought from Yin Tianjin, more tortoise mountains rose from the ground and crushed towards Yi Fei. Kill! Yi Fei brandished his sword, and the sword light in his hand suddenly transformed into a sea of blood that enveloped the entire area. Instantly, the sea of blood transformed into a deathly sword light that destroyed all of the surrounding ghost hands in one fell swoop. Then, Yi Fei took a step forward. The boundless sword light suddenly condensed into two special Taiji sword cauldrons. They turned into meteors and smashed the void. Yin Tianjin's expression became extremely solemn. Two innate mystiques in these strange sword cauldrons. No wonder Yang Ming and Yang Hao died in your hands. Unfortunately, I'm Yin Tianjin, the son of heaven from the netherworld. I'm not those two trash from the Yang clan. Yin Yang reversal. Yin Tianjin waved his hand, and the Yin and Yang energies of the death rain converged on his hand. Yi Fei's expression flickered, and at the same time, he spread his azure dragon wings. At the same time, his body began to shine with dazzling violet gold light. The golden body of despair made Yi Fei look like a war devil from the primordial era, unstoppable and unstoppable. He took a step forward, and the sword light in his hand appeared again. As he approached Yin Tianjin, he slashed out at lightning speed. Yin Tianjin sneered. He flicked his finger, and his body suddenly turned into Yin-Yang Qi. The Yang Qi flew into the sky and sank into the ground. It avoided Yi Fei's sword light in a strange way and suddenly condensed behind Yi Fei. Yin-Yang Sky flipping hand. Yin Tianjin formed a seal with his hands. The giant seal looked like a special, innate, divine rune that contained a trace of Tao. It slammed towards Yi Fei's body. Yi Fei felt his golden body shake violently, and cracks appeared on it. This attack had almost destroyed his golden body of despair. The experts in the top 10 of the Earth Carnage Proclamation are indeed extraordinary. Each one of them at least possesses the offensive strength of Divine Lord level. Yi Fei's expression was icy cold. But on his body, raging fighting intent and blood-colored light burned at this time. The will of bloody battle was fully activated. At this moment, Yi Fei suddenly fell into a state of madness. In his state of madness, the seal on his bloodline was once again broken. An extremely tyrannical emotion erupted from the bottom of Yi Fei's heart. I'll kill you. Deity, tribulation, blood sword. Rumble. Heaven and earth shook. Even the yin-yang palanquin shook violently when the blood sword appeared. Yin Tianjin's face was filled with shock. How is this possible? He actually has 3 natural mystiques. No, he must die. Yin Tianjin's face was filled with killing intent. The entire death rain was under his influence. It turned into a terrifying scythe of the death god. The scythe cut through the void and collided with the deity tribulation blood sword mercilessly. In an instant, the sickle shattered and crumbled. Yi Fei groaned. He wasn't as strong as Yin Tianjin in terms of cultivation level. Even if he used the mad demon battle technique and activated his bloodline, he still had to bear the yin-yang suppression of the entire death rain. The blood sword collapsed instantly, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Kill. Yin Tianjin was furious. The dignity of the top 10 of the Earth Carnage roll didn't allow him to lose to Yi Fei. He had to kill Yi Fei quickly before Yi Fei could break free from the death rain suppression and take out the Ghost Emperor Cauldron. Kill. Yi Fei roared. The violent emotion after the bloodline breakthrough affected him. If he didn't kill Yin Tianjin, he wouldn't retract the sword in his hand. The moment the sword light exploded, Yi Fei was like a raging war demon. He charged forward violently. Yin Tianjin sneered. The yin-yang divine armor suddenly appeared on his body. He wasn't afraid at all. Chapter 24:37. Purple divine lightning, the sword light, and the yin-yang qi collided once again, causing a resplendent radiance to erupt. Yi Fei's body retreated once again. He was slightly unable to withstand the power of the yin-yang palanquin. After all, the breakthrough in his bloodline was only temporary. He couldn't fully control and unleash the true power of the earthly sovereign's bloodline. It was the same for Yin Tianjin. Although his death reign was powerful, it was only formed from his mystique. It wasn't the real death reign. Once Yi Fei's deity tribulation blood sword exceeded the limits of the death reign, Yin Tianjin would also be injured. This kind of injury caused a trace of blood to flow out from the corner of Yin Tianjin's mouth for the first time. Even the yin-yang divine armor on his body showed signs of cracking. This is impossible. Yin Tianjin was once ranked in the top 10 of the Earth Fiend ranking. He naturally had his dignity. He couldn't allow himself to be defeated by a nameless person. Yin Tianjin was completely enraged. Following his anger, the entire death rain started to compress and become violent. It was as if it was going to change from a world to a spatial origin. And Yi Fei, who was in the spatial origin, would definitely be annihilated. Kill. Yi Fei let out a demonic roar. Under the influence of the demonic nature of his bloodline, Yi Fei didn't know what fear was. His heart was filled with endless killing intent. The black gold emperor sword in his hand became even more violent. If it wasn't for Yi Fei's suppression, he would have already summoned the indestructible sword token in his body. If that happened, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. After all, the indestructible sword token was an item of the earthly sovereign. Unless there was no other choice, Yi Fei would definitely not reveal it. Therefore, Yi Fei could only use his consciousness to suppress it and defend this final line of defense. However, his body was under the control of the demonic nature. It erupted with an even more intense demonic light. The sword beam that he brandished was filled with endless demonic nature and a thick aura of destruction. When these two auras combined, Yi Fei's sword beam turned into a pitch-black taiji sword diagram. It stabbed into the gradually condensing spatial origin. The spatial origin silently began to shatter. However, before it was destroyed, Yin Tianjin used this origin to unleash his strongest yin-yang divine light. This divine light pierced through Yi Fei's body, creating a hole from his chest to his back. The hole was dripping with blood, and white bone stubble could be seen. It looked extremely horrifying. However, Yi Fei was currently in a state of madness and demonic control. He did not know what pain was. He gathered his sword again and ignited his soul. The horrifying, destructive sword light shattered Yin Tianjin's yin-yang godly armor and pierced a deep, bloody hole in his shoulder. The immense pain made Yin Tianjin roar in anger. However, he had to retreat continuously to avoid Yi Fei's crazy, destructive sword light. Yi Fei's survival instinct also made him retreat quickly to avoid the yin-yang divine light released by the spatial origin of the death rain. In the end, the two of them retreated to the edge of the world in the yin-yang palanquin. They looked at each other as if they were separated by time and space. They both felt the shock and killing intent of the other. This scene shocked many of the martial artists who saw it. Even Bai Yanran and Mad Dog stopped fighting with the disciples of the yin-yang palace and looked ahead in disbelief. Although they could not enter the death rain, everyone could clearly see everything that was happening in the world in the palanquin through the lifted curtains of the yin-yang palanquin. Naturally, they could see every detail of the battle between Yi Fei and Yin Tianjin. This is unbelievable. Who in the Imperial City doesn't know who that person is? Yin Tianjin's yin-yang palanquin is powerful. Once he is dragged into it, Yin Tianjin is like a god. He is invincible. There are very few people who can fight Yin Tianjin to a draw in the yin-yang palanquin. This is the so-called replacement of the old by the new generation. Every time there is an Earth Carnage roll contest, there will be countless dark horses. This person called Yi Fei is undoubtedly a dark horse. Many warriors sighed. This battle had made many people remember the name Yi Fei. This situation infuriated the yin-yang palace greatly. What is Yin Tianjin doing? This demon has already killed Yang Ming and Yang Hao. He has humiliated our yin-yang palace greatly. If we still can't kill him this time, where will our yin-yang palace's reputation go? Suddenly, a half-step divine lord rushed out from the crowd. This person was Yin Tianjin's guardian. Unless Yin Tianjin was in a life or death situation, he would not appear. Now that he was enraged, he wanted to rush into the yin-yang palanquin and cooperate with Yin Tianjin to kill Yi Fei. Mad Dog's face changed. Bai Yanran stomped his feet. This Wu Jie, why isn't he here at the crucial moment? Who said that I'm not here? Miss Bai, you can't wrong me. Wu Jie's figure suddenly appeared in the crowd. Behind Wu Jie, there was a youth in white and an old man in white. Father, brother, why are you here? Bai Yanran shouted in surprise. The ones who came were Bai Suifeng and Bai Shizhong. Bai Shizhong said with a black face, if we didn't come, you would have been harmed by this kid. Cough, cough. Let's stop this battle first. If there are any grudges, let's settle them on the Earth Carnage roll. Bai Suifeng knew how much Pan Wang valued Yi Fei. Seeing Yi Fei being surrounded by the yin-yang palace, Bai Suifeng slammed his palm towards the yin-yang palanquin, wanting to force Yi Fei and Yin Tianjin out. However, the yin-yang palanquin was incomparably tough. Even Bai Suifeng, a half-step divine lord, couldn't destroy it. Bai Suifeng was embarrassed, and anger appeared on his old face. At this moment, a beautiful woman suddenly walked out from behind Bai Suifeng. She shook her head slightly and said, Senior Bai, this yin-yang palanquin is a very special treasure. Ordinary supernatural powers can't break it. Master once said that the best way to deal with the yin-yang palanquin is to release the strongest yang lightning. Boom! As she spoke, the woman's body was already releasing lightning. She was like an angry mother of lightning, releasing a bolt of purple lightning. When that lightning appeared, the entire world was filled with an immense pressure. It was as if the heavenly Tao had descended, shaking the souls of martial artists. The half-step divine lord of the yin-yang palace couldn't help but exclaim, not good. That's the long-lost purple divine lightning. There's actually someone in this world who can learn it? The purple divine lightning was the natural nemesis of the yin-yang palanquin and the death rain. As this bolt of lightning was released, a hole was torn in the yin-yang palanquin that even half-step divine lords couldn't break through. In the death rain, Yi Fei's eyes flickered with a demonic light. He was gathering his sword and burning his soul. He was about to rush up and fight Yin Tianjin when suddenly, purple divine lightning appeared in the sky above the death rain. It tore apart the sky above the death rain. At the same time, a bolt of lightning shot over. "Yi Fei, wake up!" An incomparably familiar voice came from a void. It was Lu Qing's voice. Yi Fei was a little surprised. He hurriedly used his consciousness to suppress the demonic nature, allowing the lightning to strike his body. It was a drop of cool blood. When it hit Yi Fei's body, it immediately fused with his wounds. Not only did it suppress the demonic nature in Yi Fei's body, but it also rapidly healed his injuries. Yi Fei's consciousness was completely awakened. He understood that there was still a certain gap between him and Yin Tianjin. Yi Fei immediately used the Azure Dragon wings and rushed out of the death rain through the crack. He also escaped the Yin-Yang Palanquin's imprisonment. Chapter 2438. Mountain breaking while the battle ended as quickly as it started. Yin Tianjin left without hesitation. The situation wasn't looking good for him, so he retreated immediately. Wu Jie cursed. That guy with the surname Yin is really sneaky. He couldn't win, so he ran away. It's not that he couldn't win. It's just that Yin Tianjin didn't want to expose his strength. Yi Fei shook his head. He could feel that Yin Tianjin didn't use his full strength. If the battle continued, he might not be Yin Tianjin's match. After all, he was only a half-step Dao Lord. There was still a gap between him and a Dao Lord. Looks like I have to break through to Dao Lord as soon as possible. Yi Fei sighed inwardly. Yin Tianjin's attack this time made him understand the strength of an Earth Carnage Proclamation expert. Just Yin Tianjin, who was in the top 10, was already strenuous for him to deal with. Then how strong would the top 5 or even top 3 martial artists be? Hearing Yi Fei's words, Bai Suifeng was secretly relieved. He walked up quickly and said, "Yi Fei, looks like you've decided to participate in the Earth Carnage Roll competition. However, you seem to have just broken through to the Lord of Heaven. There will be some risks if you want to break through to Dao Lord again. Take this elixir." Looking at the elixir, Bai Yinran's eyes lit up. He said in surprise, "Father, this seems to be the monarch elixir refined by the ancestor. It said that it takes 100 years to refine a cauldron. It's only been 70 years since the ancestor last refined it," Bai Suifeng said with a grin. "Thanks to you guys, ancestor rarely refines pills. This time, it was also a deduction that you guys might be participating in the Earth Carnage Proclamation. That was why ancestor made an exception and refined a cauldron. The 3 of you just happen to have 1 pill each." Saying that, Bai Suifeng gave Yi Fei, Bai Yinran, and Mad Dog 1 each. This made Mad Dog feel flattered. Lu Qing quietly pulled Yi Fei aside and took out a small porcelain bottle. "Yi Fei, Senior Heavenly Dao Tree gave this to you. He said that it's hard to suppress your bloodline when it's out of control. This blood can help you suppress your demonic nature and maintain your consciousness. Senior Heavenly Dao Tree is too kind. By the way, is everyone doing well in Qingzhou?" Yi Fei put away the porcelain bottle and asked Lu Qing in a low voice. Lu Qing was very excited. She chatted with Yi Fei as they walked. Unbeknownst to them, Bai Shizhong, who was not far away, was so envious that his eyes almost turned into those of a rabbit. On the way here, when he saw Lu Qing's cold demeanor, he did not dare to go up and speak. Only now did he realize that Lu Qing was not cold, but was only cold to him. Towards Yi Fei, Lu Qing was filled with passion. Bai Shizhong was so angry that he even had the urge to chop Yi Fei to death with a knife. That bastard. Not only did he kidnap my sister, but he even hooked up with goddess Lu Qing. He's really a scourge. Bai Shizhong looked up and sighed. Out of sight, out of mind. He ran to arrange for the martial practitioners of the Lord Pan Palace to enter the imperial city. Wu Jie was also generous. He directly gave half of the inn to the cultivators of the Lord Pan Hall. After that, everyone went into seclusion again, making the final push for the Earth Carnage Proclamation. Yi Fei also took the Lord Pan pill and walked into his room with Lu Qing. The 2 of them announced that they would go into seclusion together. Actually, The main reason was that Yi Fei was afraid that Xiao Chao would be too bored if he went into seclusion for too long. Therefore, while he was in seclusion, Yi Fei handed Xiao Chao and the dragon turtle to Lu Qing, asking her to help take care of them. However, this decision obviously caused many people to misunderstand. Bai Shizhong was even more dissatisfied. He said to Bai Yanran with a sour expression, "Sister, if not for you, I would have beaten Yi Fei to death for being so arrogant." "Brother, what does it have to do with me if you beat up Yi Fei?" Bai Yanran's face was slightly red. She turned around and quickly walked into her room. However, for some reason, she felt a sour feeling in her heart. Of course, outsiders would not know that Lu Qing had entered the room purely to take care of Xiao Chao. Lu Qing, who had been reduced to a nanny, nearly kicked Yi Fei out. Unfortunately, Yi Fei became a cultivation maniac the moment he entered the room. Lu Qing could not do anything even if she wanted to. In the end, Lu Qing could only bring Xiao Chao along with her to slap the dragon turtle with a dark expression. The dragon turtle also had a dark expression. It was once again reduced to a rubber ball, being slapped around by Xiao Chao and Lu Qing. Furthermore, although the dragon turtle did not have any extra fat, its elasticity had increased instead of decreased. Lu Qing originally did not like to play such girly games, but as she slapped it, Lu Qing magically discovered that she began to like the feeling of slapping the dragon turtle with her hands. Xiao Chao was even more elated. She hugged the dragon turtle and rolled around Yi Fei. On the other side, Yi Fei also refined the monarch pill immediately. Then, he felt that his soul perception had become unprecedentedly clear. The Tao mountain that he could only vaguely sense in the past had become incomparably clear in his mind. However, this mountain was too huge. It was extremely difficult to cross it. At this moment, Yi Fei suddenly felt fortunate that Zhao Yu had helped him obtain the 1,000,000 mystic veins. These mystic veins, in addition to my own 1,000,000 mystic veins, make a total of 2,000,000 mystic veins. I don't believe that I can't break through this Tao Mountain's barrier. Undying Sword Soul, absorb. Rumble. Rumbles came from Yi Fei's Sky Palace. A total of 2,000,000 mystic veins were all released by Yi Fei. They turned into mystic vein dragons and were continuously absorbed by the destructive vortex formed by the Undying Sword Soul. Of course, what Yi Fei had awakened was the Undying Sword Soul that existed in the Undying Sword token and not the Undying Sword Soul that he had comprehended himself. After all, the former was formed by the 9 Heaven Swordmaster. Whether it was in terms of quality or power, it was not something that Yi Fei's Sword Soul could compare to. Activating the 9 Heaven Swordmaster's Undying Sword Soul was equivalent to having a Rinzhu realm expert help him refine these mystic veins. The speed and quality of the mystic veins would be top-notch. Originally, Yi Fei would need half a year to refine these 2,000,000 mystic veins, even if he did not eat or drink. However, after awakening the Undying Sword token, Yi Fei only used a month to completely refine them. Rumble. After a large number of mystic veins were refined, Yi Fei felt that every piece of his flesh and every cell of his body was filled with boundless power. Then, he began to activate the Tao, Lord Realm golden body of despair that he had comprehended long ago. Over and over again, he launched a tenacious attack on the Tao mountain that was obstructing him in his heart. If someone were to use their divine sense to inspect Yi Fei's body, they would discover that Yi Fei's divine soul had already left the Emperor's throne within his sky palace and walked directly onto the Lord of Heaven's divine bridge. At the end of the bridge was a majestic Tao mountain. This was a divine mountain formed by the heavenly Tao that wanted to cut off the path of a martial artist. However, in the cycle of the heavenly Tao, there was always a chance of survival. This chance of survival was the surging waves under the Lord of Heaven's divine bridge. These were not real waves, but the boundless power that Yi Fei had gathered to refine the mystic veins. When Yi Fei's divine soul stepped onto the divine bridge, he controlled this power and turned it into a surging wave that slammed violently against the Tao mountain. When it came crashing down, a loud boom was heard. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.